Hello. Welcome to my channel Touching Stories. You're about to hear an amazing story about love and unexpected decisions. Enjoy watching.
You're going to be the most beautiful bride. This dress is great. It fits perfectly. Shaking her head, enthusiastically said her friend, while Leslie was spinning around a huge mirror, looking at herself from all sides, and was forced to admit that she really looked just excellent. Isn't it a little tight in the chest? Leslie turned to the girl consultant of the wedding salon. She took a couple deep breaths. Apparently, I've tightened your corset too much. It can be made a little looser. The girl stepped aside, asked Leslie to spin around again. No, we're not doing anything else. You look absolutely ravishing. I give you my word, your fiancé will be blinded by this ethereal beauty. Even if you eat pies, you'll be fine for 2 days. Do you think so? Leslie winked at her faithful friend and said aloud. In about 30 minutes, they were leaving the salon, exhausted, tired, but happy. Leslie pulled out her phone and dialed her favorite number. It was necessary to inform John to share her joy. For 2 years, there was no one more dear to her. At first, they just met, and about a year ago, they rented an apartment. They're finally living together. Now they have their own cozy little nest, albeit a rented one. Yes, sweetheart. John, how are you? I picked up my dress. It fits like a glove. Selena says you're gonna lose your head over something so beautiful. It's so. Leslie rolled her eyes. There were no words. The dress really suited her. I can imagine. Can I see it? He said conspiratorially quiet. What are you? You cannot before the wedding. I'll take it to my mom, and then I'll come and get you. You haven't forgotten that Dad brought Grandma from the village. We're invited to a family dinner, so get ready. Granny is going to bake her specialty pie. Leslie, I don't know how to say this. Evan's leaving tomorrow for his internship abroad. He's throwing a farewell party for the occasion. I look at her, and I realize my offer doesn't faze Selena. It's no fun. An entire evening of being lectured on the subject of it's time to get smart. Leslie, I can't. If you'd given me a little more notice. But I have my own thing to do. I have a 5 o'clock appointment at the beauty parlor, and then I'm meeting an old friend. I'm sorry. I'd love to, but started talking fast, like she was making excuses. I understand. Letting out a heavy sigh, Leslie looked at the time and resolutely accelerated her step down the stairs leading to the exit. Selena kept up. Literally in half an hour, she should be at the beauty parlor, and she still had to get there. Once outside, they said goodbye and immediately rushed to their car. Just an hour later, Leslie opened the front door of her parents' apartment with her keys. Where's John? The first thing Grandma asked. Most of all, she wanted to have a heart-to-heart talk with her future son-in-law. Threatened not to offend her favorite granddaughter. She knew John, of course. She'd told her granddaughter many times to stick with him. He's a good guy, responsible. You can't find a guy like him these days. He's got a friend who's going abroad for an internship. He invited us to a restaurant. I didn't go. And John couldn't say no. Before she could cross the threshold, Leslie began to justify herself. Her grandmother took the case from her hands. She unzipped the zipper, took a glimpse. What a beautiful. And why didn't you go? Go get ready, clean yourself up, and together with your husband go to the party. There's no reason for your son-in-law to go to restaurants alone. Do you know what girls are like these days? It won't be a big deal if we go out without you. A wife should always be by her husband's side. She wagged her index finger to make sure. Listen to me, granddaughter. I've lived my life. I've seen a lot of things. I know what I'm talking about. Leslie shrieked with joy, jumped up to her, hugged her, kissed her on the cheek. 10 minutes later, she was in her car. She'll be here in a minute. She'll change her clothes, clean herself up a little. Then she'd call John and ask him to meet her. She'll be a little late, but that's okay. She's got a good reason. Her beloved grandmother is here. She enters the entrance. She takes the elevator to her floor, pulls out her keys. She knows for sure no one's supposed to be home. There's music playing quietly in the apartment. The first thing he notices in the hallway are the shoes of his faithful friend. That's odd. Selena should be at the beauty parlor right now. She's getting a wrap, shocking, haircut, some shit. I tiptoed up to the bedroom, listened. I was getting ready to knock on the door. Who knows? Maybe John had lent his keys to someone as a friend. But when she heard Selena's voice, she stopped. Maybe we should stop playing with fire. God forbid Leslie finds out. I barely got her off my back today. Why do you get married if you're gonna keep going out with her? I'm warning you, this is the last time. That's enough. I can't go on like this and I don't want to. I'm ashamed to look her in the eye. Don't even think about it. It's gonna stay the same. I'm pretty sure you can't take it anymore and you'll come running. There was a long moan. When Leslie opened the door gently, she saw something she never thought she'd see. John and Selena on their practically conjugal bed, completely naked. On the bedside table, an open bottle of wine, 2 glasses, fruit. Wow, they're so prepared. Both of them so engrossed in each other that they didn't even hear the door creak open. How many times have I told John to oil the hinges? But they say you wait 3 years for what you promised. Not knowing what was going on and not knowing how to behave in such cases, I took a few steps back. I opened the front door, jumped out into the entrance, slammed the door with all my might. Let them worry a little, if they heard. Who'd have thought it? Bastards. 2 days before the wedding, I got in the car. It's a good thing the windows don't face the courtyard. With trembling hands, I barely put the key in the ignition. The main thing is to drive away quickly, so that God forbid I don't come back. You have to have self-respect and not fight over a man. Cheated, broke up and forgot. That's it. Goodbye. I stopped outside a house. I couldn't go any farther. I looked up with my eyes full of tears. I saw the sign Tourist Center. I got out of the car. I went inside, walked up to the tour operator. She and John were going on a wedding trip, but not until later. In July, there was a decent amount of money on the card. Tomorrow, she had to pay for the restaurant for 30 people. Good thing I hadn't paid it yet. Girl, do you have a hop tour? I wiped my tears with my hand and asked just like that. Yes, the flight leaves today. Egypt. 4-star hotel. Can we book it? The flight leaves in 4 hours. I don't want to go to Egypt. There's sharks there. I've been there. Check it out. Leslie got the card. Let John handle the registration, the restaurant, his guests. Let him do whatever he wants. I don't care anymore. Passport. Smiling indulgently, the tour operator asked in a calm tone. My body started to vibrate again. It was like a large electric shock. Leslie undid the lock on her handbag. Passport. Repeated, as if she didn't hear the question and didn't even realize what was happening until she saw her documents in the side pocket. Thank God. I remembered how the Toastmaster asked me to bring some baby pictures for the wedding slideshow. Looking through my mum's photo album, I went into the documents for some reason. Took just in case, birth certificate, certificate of attestation, foreign passport. All neatly folded in the side pocket of her handbag. Sometimes such carelessness becomes the cause of serious problems, but now for such a negative trait, I was ready to jump and jump with joy. Please, I said it in syllables, and then I thought about it. Am I doing the right thing? Maybe I should make things work out for the best. Not leave John. Break up with dignity, so to speak. But then I remembered what they did to me. No, I know how to hurt, too. Let them do whatever they want now. Girl, you're doing the paperwork. I need to make an urgent phone call. Leaving her passport, Leslie went outside. She dialed another one of her favorite numbers. Mom, listen to me carefully and don't interrupt. Okay, I'm leaving for vacation in 4 hours. Alone. Mom tried to cut in on the conversation. What vacation? What are you talking about? Mom, I'm telling you again, don't interrupt. John cheated on me with Selena. There were noises in the phone again. Leslie, this can't be happening. Are you all right in your head? Where are you? Sophia screamed. Mom, I'm gonna tell you one more time. I left you guys at home. And there they are, naked on my bed and John's. Don't you get it? There's not gonna be a wedding. Call a cab with your father. Take my suitcase. Throw my slippers in there. Check my closet for shorts, some t-shirts, socks, underwear. Get some pills. Just please don't say anything to anyone yet, especially John. I'll drive you back in my car. Leslie took a breath. Mom was finally starting to get something. There was silence on the phone. In the background were the voices of her father and grandmother. You're going to have a very busy day tomorrow. I'll have to return the wedding dress. Explain to John to forget I exist and never set eyes on me again. Do you understand me? Go pack a bag. I'll meet you at the airport. If you don't make it in time, you'll have to go without your stuff. Bye. See you later. I'm in the middle of booking a hot tour to Egypt. I don't have time for this. Leslie hung up on me. The important thing right now is not to relax. I'll cry later. I'll do it alone and from the heart. Resolutely nodding to herself, still afraid to be scared, and before it's too late, to get the idea out of her head. Because acting isn't exactly pretty either. But sorry. As they say, what you fought for, you got what you got. She could have not wasted so much of her precious time on this very real crap. She met a decent man instead of this tramp. At least now we'll be practically even. Let him wiggle out of it. Explain to the guests why the wedding is upset. No, it's settled. She's not gonna change her mind. I left the agency in a less disgusted mood. I felt a little better. And not because I was relieved. No, I just imagined the surprised faces of these two freaks who for a long time I thought were decent and honest people. It's okay. As soon as I get there, I'll check into the hotel. I'll connect the internet and wish these two happy love lives. Thank God the truth came out now and not 10 years from now. Daughter, what happened? Explain it to me. I didn't understand anything on the phone. Mom was gibbering non-stop. Father, pale as chalk, did not have time to light a cigarette one after another. It's rare for a man to marry off his daughter so unsuccessfully. Grandma stroked her gaunt hand on her back, saying, "It's all right, we'll get over it. Thank God for taking you away from that man. Fly, get some rest." She handed Leslie an envelope. "I wanted to give it to her as a wedding present. I've been putting it off. Take it. Buy some bucks at the airport, and don't deny yourself anything. If that bastard shows up, I'll send him right back where he came from." Her words made the pain in my chest almost unbearable. How could one put out of one's mind everything that had happened just a few hours ago? To come to terms with the fact that your favorite person is complete and utter shit. It's scary, unbearably hard and painful, because she knew she would relive that shame for a long time to come. Over and over again to remember and cringe with unbearable heartache. Once seated on the plane, Leslie sat happily in her seat by the window. From the fact that you can turn away from everyone, close your eyes, stare at the porthole, and just be silent. I wanted to breathe a sigh of relief for the first time. A young man sat down next to me. He tried to ask something, but Leslie was like a deaf mute, only shrugged her shoulders and shook her head. She didn't feel like talking at all. Since some time she had become very cautious about men. Who knows? She might run into a moral asshole like John again. She'd rather spend the 12 days alone. On the plus side, her nervous system would be fine. The commander of the ship began to say something, thanking her for choosing what he said was the best airline. The adrenaline pumping into my bloodstream made my breathing quicken. Despite the disgusting mood, a smile appeared on his lips, though sour, but still a smile. The plane lifted off the ground. That's it. No more crying. No more painful memories. Let's forget about the past at all costs, breathe fully, and think only of a happy future. Lucky the room had a sea view. Leslie opened the window. God, it was beautiful. She turned on her phone. The first thing she did was connect the internet and call her parents. Let them know she'd made it. I answered all of Grandma's questions, so they wouldn't worry. I told them the exchange rate for the bucks. Granny was indignant for a long time about the expensive exchange rate at the airport. Then she calmed down. I reminded her again not to save money on anything and to have a good vacation. Before I could disconnect from the conversation, I got an incoming call from John. It's worth noting that it wasn't the only call. The poor thing was worried that she hadn't told him where she'd be spending the night. If she had, he probably would have kept Selena overnight. She texted him, "I'm in Egypt. I wish you happiness. Keep walking with Selena. You're both nothing to me. I hate you. Don't write or look for me. You can register your marriage with Selena tomorrow. I don't mind. But you'll have to pay for the cafe and the Toastmaster yourself. I spent that money on a trip to the sea. It's compensation for moral damage. I hope you don't mind." I reread it several times. I don't think I've forgotten anything. It's clear. It's clear. There should be no further questions. I sent it. Both check marks turned blue immediately. That's good. Let him read it. It'll be good for him to know what I think of them. Excuse me. What does Selena have to do with it? I'm marrying you, not Selena. What an asshole. Don't play dumb. I saw you myself in our bedroom last night. There will be no wedding. Goodbye, and don't disturb my rest. I went out on the balcony. I took a picture of myself in my swimsuit against the sea. It's not bad. I had to make a lot of effort to make these two see a happy and satisfied face. Greetings from Egypt. I signed it, sent it, and disconnected the phone. Now we can go to the sea. Literally in 10 minutes, I took off my shorts and t-shirt. I sat down on a free sunbed. How nice. Now I would sit at my mum's kitchen, crying and not knowing what to do. And here, the sea, the sand, the sound of the waves. Grace, a young man is sitting on a sunbed. He's openly looking at her from every angle, smiles as if he saw an old acquaintance, which he has not seen for many years, and now there was a long-awaited meeting. Soon he will start noodling, telling that recently divorced from an unfaithful wife or convinced that a hardened bachelor. Never been married, because he has not met the one and only. Came just to rest, replenish the body with vitamin D. He's looking for a companionable girl to brighten up his forced loneliness. He has not even opened his mouth and did not ask anything. And already I want to answer him in plain text, so as not to roll his lips in vain. Because she has everything exactly the opposite. I want to hide from all the people, to hide in a corner and sink into my own sad thoughts. All pumped up. You can tell he goes to the gym at least 3 times a week. Let her watch. Thinks she'll fall for his pretty rapping. Yeah, right. We've seen 'em all. We should tell him to take a vacation without her. She's in enough trouble as it is. She's down on the sunbed. She took some screen out of her purse. Not paying attention to the intrusive neighbor, began to apply it first on her hands, gradually moved to her feet. "Let me put the cream on your back," offered his help. He got up from his recliner, took the cream from her hands, squeezed some onto his huge palm. Leslie was confused. That's the last thing she needed. First he will smear it on her back, and then you can't get rid of him. We know the type. She looked puzzled, trying to find the words. I don't want to offend a stranger. Who knows what's on his mind? Come on, come on. Don't be afraid, I won't eat you. He took her by the shoulders and turned her back to him. Her body trembled treacherously. She lowered her head in complete submission. John, he introduced himself. Her head rattled. No way. That name had been giving her nothing but trouble ever since. Tomorrow, she would have to come early and look for a bed away from this cocky and insolent macho. Leslie, grumbled unhappily. That's a beautiful name. Let's get to know each other. We'll be. Answered only to get him off my back and take his hands off her back. Why are you so glum? You've definitely been hurt. You didn't want to talk to me on the airplane. I honestly thought you were deaf and dumb. As if demanding an answer to the question, the new acquaintance kept his eyes on her. Biting his lower lip and feeling that he was behaving like a little underdog, Leslie sighed and sighed heavily. Leslie sighed heavily and finally forced a smile. I'm sorry. It's just that I hid here to get away from everyone. You could say I ran away from the wedding. And here you are. And John again. Leslie rolled her eyes. She shook her head as if to get rid of a compulsive obsession. The image of the failed fiancé and his beloved came to mind. It must be said that John knew how to court. He often gave trinkets, flowers, helped around the house. He could cook dinner or make borscht. How could she have guessed that John, under the mask of goodness, was doing his crazy deeds behind her back? If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she never would have believed it. Broke up with her fiancé and come here to lick her heart. Isn't that a lot of questions? I've told you more than I need to. I tried to pull away again. It's not in her nature to open up to the first person she meets. It's not like she's asking why he's on the beach alone. Why don't we talk? We have a lot in common. First of all, we were on an airplane together. He started curling his fingers. We live in the same hotel. Rooms are on the same floor. Leslie looked at him in surprise. Was he following her? Yeah, surprised. It's just that you got the key at the front desk right in front of me and didn't even notice that we're neighbors. Explained, continuing to peer at her with his huge owl eyes. Leslie arched an eyebrow in puzzlement and tilted her head to the side. The hints were becoming more and more transparent. Still, she was determined to hold her defenses for as long as she could. Big deal. I don't understand. Why are you guys doing this? Why don't you just find a girl who's more agreeable? Maybe I like you. I want to take you on a tour. How would you like that? His gaze continued to wander over her figure, stopping at the areas that all men, without exception, find extremely attractive. Leslie regretted that she had left her paro in the room. I felt small goosebumps slowly spreading all over my body. See, sand, what else do you need? I don't like excursions. I like to warm my bones on the beach. I tried to tactfully refuse. Tell me you like to sit in your room and watch TV at night. I'm definitely not going out tonight. How about tomorrow? Tomorrow we'll see, I said, smiling. Well, that's something. I thought you were gonna let out your many thorns again. Shit, I can't believe she's really gone to Egypt. John clutched his head. How could he have guessed that one ridiculous, casual affair with Selena would continue, and for a long time they'd be cheating on Leslie together? Hello, answered a completely unfamiliar incoming number. John? Good morning. This is the manager of the Venice restaurant. You have a reservation for the banquet room tomorrow. Leslie didn't make a deposit last night, and her phone's not working today. The girl named the amount, and John realized he didn't have that kind of money. He transferred his entire paycheck to Leslie's card, and he didn't even want to remember where she spent it. Girl, let me call you back in an hour. I can't reach her myself, and I don't understand what's going on. Dropping the call, dialed Leslie again. The number was unavailable, and this whole mess is because she's surrounded herself with jealous girlfriends. Selena alone. She says one thing in front of her eyes, and then she talks trash behind her back. She went ballistic when she found out he proposed to Leslie. Doesn't she realize you don't marry people like her? It's just for fun and pleasure, that's all. She started telling him it was too soon to get married. He hadn't had his fun yet, and he saw Leslie getting a ride home from a corporate event with some guy. He jumped out of the car, opened the door, walked her to the driveway. He was so jealous, he almost lost it. Realized that if he stalled a little longer, He might lose her altogether. Leslie is smart, beautiful, graduated from university, got a job in her field of study. She's making good money. She'll definitely be a good wife and mother to his future children. I should have sinned with Selena right before the wedding. I'll never forgive myself for that. They say there's no cure for stupidity. John flinched when the phone rang again. He glanced apprehensively at the screen. He saw Celine's smiling face. "Hi," he struggled to get it out. "Where's your fiancée gone? I can't reach her all morning." Her arrogance irritated me to the teeth. What does he see in her? No upbringing, no education. All she's learned is how to spread her legs and talk back to the customers behind the counter. She's gone. She's gone to Egypt. You don't have to call her. She's not gonna pick up the phone anyway. Remember yesterday when I told you I heard the front door slam? Well, that was Leslie. She saw us. You can rejoice. There's not gonna be a wedding." John leaned back on the bed, and only now it began to dawn on him what a serious mess he'd gotten himself into. What happens now? He heard a surprised voice, and even without seeing her face, he realized he was smiling. Not just smiling, but barely holding back laughter. "Nothing. I won't have a wife. You won't have a girlfriend. Maybe some of our comrades will turn their backs on us, and rightly so. I'd do the same if I were them. Some won't turn away, but they'll judge us in public. And what will happen to us? Anticipating that now there will be no more obstacles. There's no longer any obstacle to a permanent reunion. Maybe John will come to his senses and propose. And nothing would happen to us. We'll finally stop seeing each other. We should have broken the damn triangle a long time ago. All right then, I'll see you later. I got a lot to do. I gotta call everybody. Explain that on the eve of the wedding, my fiancé left me for a vacation at sea. Sophia, good morning." All morning, John was going to dial the phone number of the failed mother-in-law, but his hand did not rise to press the call. His index finger felt numb, hovering over the green tube. Realizing perfectly well that he would not hear anything good, but somewhere deep there was still a tiny hope that he would be talked to as in the good old days. "And good luck to you." At one time it seemed to Sophia that she and her future son-in-law were close in spirit. They could just call each other, to congratulate on a holiday, to ask how they were feeling. Once John even had to complain to his mother-in-law about a stubborn daughter and ask for help. Sophia rushed to the rescue, without understanding blamed Leslie and completely stood in his defense. Now she was squeezing the words out of her mouth because she didn't feel like talking to him at all. It would be better if he didn't call at all and didn't spoil the already disgusting mood. All morning, she had to justify herself to her relatives and explain that the planned celebration was postponed indefinitely and might not take place. "Sophia, when did Leslie leave for Egypt? She didn't even mention it to me last night. I was counting on Leslie to spare me the juicy details. Why do parents need to know things they don't need to know? And as soon as I saw my husband in bed with my best friend, I decided to stay out of your way. I bought a hot vacation and took off. Any other questions? 'Cause Grandma's on the phone. She wants to tell you what she thinks of you, you bastard. I hope I've answered all your questions." While John was searching for words, thinking how he could get out of the almost hopeless situation, Sophia was covering the microphone so that John could not hear his grandmother's foul language. It had to be said that Nana was not stingy. There were such words that Sophia's eyes grew rounder and rounder with each word. "I'm very sorry," I mumbled. "Save your regret for Selena. And don't come near my daughter again. We don't need that kind of family. Do whatever you want. We've called our guests and told them there will be no wedding." Sophia dropped the call. We could still talk, but then John would have to plug his ears because no one was going to praise and understand him. There was a persistent knock on the door. Leslie sat in complete silence and even jumped with surprise. "Who else is there?" she grumbled. John stood on the doorstep. Leslie made another sour face not intending to invite the intruder into the room. She'd been so mopey for the last couple hours that she didn't want to hear or see anyone. And it was probably the phone that was to blame. Turning it on, Leslie saw countless calls and messages from John. There were a couple of calls from her parents and even one message from Selena. The friend, of course, was in her repertoire. She'd admitted in all honesty that the connection had been going on for a long time. Moreover, she had tried several times to stop everything, but John was adamantly opposed. After sending her a short love and advice, she talked to her grandmother for a while and disconnected the phone again so that no one else could get through. I didn't read the Ashol's messages. I didn't need to get upset. He wouldn't write anything new, and Selena had already reported his old adventures. Maybe she would read them later, but now, everything seemed unrealistic, perhaps even hopeless. The idea of leaving everything behind and running away from the problems that would soon have to be dealt with again seemed very, very ridiculous. Very, very ridiculous. "I'm inviting you to the party," John said, scrutinizing her disgruntled face. "What the hell kind of party? Don't you get that I don't want to see anyone? How many times do I have to tell you?" "One more time for the uncomprehending. Get ready. Our hotel is having a foam party tonight." I repeated it insistently. "I repeat, I'll be waiting for you downstairs. Don't be late. It starts in 20 minutes. I hope that's enough time for you to get your bathing suit on." He turned and walked down the hall. He stopped at the elevator, turned his head. Leslie hummed nervously. If this kept up, she was going to have a lot of peace. They stared at each other in silence for a few seconds. Then Leslie slammed the door shut. She opened the closet with her few belongings, took out her only dry, old bathing suit, tried it on. She regretted that the new one was still in the locker at John's apartment, but decided it would do just fine. I left the room and went to the front desk. The music was blaring. Leslie was covered in a lather that was impossible to get rid of. John wouldn't let her go for a minute. They were jumping and twitching together to Oriental tunes and laughing heartily. Leslie? No, she hadn't heard that. A surprised female voice did indeed sound right next to her ear. "Excuse me, what are you doing here? You're getting married tomorrow, aren't you?" John's cousin was standing right in front of her and couldn't think of anything. She said the words with a kind of incomprehensible anger, as if insinuating that wives don't act like that. "There's not gonna be a wedding. John's out there with Selena, and I'm here." Leslie looked at her companion. Her heart raced with such force that it seemed that her ribs were about to crack. John didn't hesitate long, but put his arm around her waist and pulled her close to him. He could see in her eyes that she needed to play along, which he did with pleasure. Not only that the girl with appetizing forms, though blonde, but God had not endowed her with brains. John noticed this sad beauty at the airport. He realized at once that it would be difficult to cheer her up. But she didn't stand a chance, because that's what he'd decided. "I don't understand. Can you explain to me? Who's that?" Sarah shouted in Sarah's ear, nodding her head at her companion. "Why is he acting like he's your fiancé instead of my brother? Does John know you're here chilling with someone else? I hope he finds out from you. Give him a big fiery hello from us." She raised her head. She kissed John on the cheek. She waved to Sarah. "Bye, have a nice vacation." John squeezed her hand gently. He smiled and waved to Sarah. He held Leslie close to him and twirled her in a dance. Sarah did not hide from the fact that Leslie averted her eyes with the usual awkwardness and discreetly distanced herself from her beau. "I don't understand. I had to call my brother and find out what was going on between them," Sarah said, looking for Leslie in the crowd. She stood in one place until the couple was lost in the dancing crowd. As soon as they disappeared, John heard Leslie's displeased voice. "Hands off. Thanks for playing along, but don't you ever do that again." Hearing her words, John took his hands off. It was like a dream come true. Her eyes, which a second ago were closing themselves, opened as if at the sound of danger. Outside the window, lightning flashed relentlessly. The thunderclaps turned into a continuous rumble. He jumped out of bed and ran to the open window, closing it. At that moment, the rain slammed against the glass. "Can you explain to me what cat got between you two? Everything was fine. Now she's openly making out with some guy. I wish she'd be ashamed of me." "Shh." Sarah spit a lot. "Good thing you didn't get married." She sighed heavily and continued. "Brother, I'm not going to keep quiet. Let everyone know what she's like." Her eyes were closing from fatigue, but Sarah braced herself. She had to fulfill her sisterly duty and say everything she thought. "Is the man any good?" "I wanted to hear that small and Plagevany. You'll quickly crush him with your authority. Such a slightly elderly Don Juan does not realize that the face is not out." "But that's not what I heard." "Nothing. He looks a little like you. Tall, handsome. I'd love to make out with him." "So, what happened?" I chuckled. Her tongue was barely moving, but Sarah needed to find out. "It wasn't a big deal. I cheated on her. She found out. She bought a hot trip, went on vacation, and left me to fend for myself. I had to take care of everything on my own. I just don't know where the man came from." With a sinking heart, I prepared to listen to my sister's moralizing. It makes sense. That's the way it should be. Women's solidarity has never been abolished. I understood. But he still wasn't ready for Leslie's sassy and savory kick. And then, in order not to listen to lectures, just dropped the call and resolutely headed for the shower. Cleaned himself up. Looked at the mess in the apartment, which he'd long since gotten used to. There was no strength to be in an untidy and uncomfortable apartment. He went outside, got behind the wheel, started the car and drove off. Literally in half an hour he stopped the car in the yard near an old 9-story building. He is a living person, and he also needs to relieve the tension. I realized that it was all my own fault, but it was still unpleasant to realize that your girlfriend immediately jumped into the arms of a complete stranger man. So much for Leslie, showing her true colors. He always had the key to the intercom and Selena's apartment. Deciding to fall like snow on his head, went to the place where he has always forgiven everything, understood and looked forward to. Careful not to wake Selena, John opened the lock, turned the knob, and slowly opened the front door. Already he imagined lying down at her side, sniffing sweetly under her ear. And then as soon as she wakes up, they're gonna get revenge on Leslie. Just before I could take my shoes off, Selena came running out of the room. "Ah, John, I wasn't expecting you today." She tried in vain to find the belt on the row she had hastily thrown on and cover her nakedness. She closed the door tightly behind her. She stood with her back against it. "Why are you so scared? Didn't you expect me?" I clutched my temples with my hands and squeezed my head, squeezing my eyes shut. The pain pulsed in her evenly, beating the same rhythm. "Give me a pill for my head. My stomach's killing me." I was surprised Celine didn't move. She stood still, took a breath. She took a step forward. "John, you'd better go. I have a relative visiting. He's asleep right now. I don't want to wake him. I'll come over tonight and we'll talk." "A relative, you say?" Abruptly pushing her aside, he opened the door. There was a man I didn't know lying on the sofa, about 50 years old. "I don't get it," the stranger said. He looked at his watch unhappily. He wrinkled his nose and asked in surprise, "Who are you?" "Oh, that's great." John slapped his forehead, gave a nervous chuckle, and turned to Selena. "Maybe you can explain to me what's going on. And how often do you have elderly relatives like this sleeping over?" Sighing heavily, Selena took John's hand and led him into the kitchen, closing the door tightly behind her again, as if she was afraid John would pick a fight. Knave. If only there was someone to fight over. Even the most violent criminals have their own taboos about not touching women, old people, and children. I don't want to go to jail for that grandfather, because if he hits him, he'll just crumble or break in half. Don't make jealousy scenes. When you proposed to Leslie without regard for my feelings, I swallowed it. Or did you expect me to be faithful to you for the rest of my life? Waiting for you to finally play family and start taking me seriously. John could only nod silently at her words and grin wryly. How long have you been sleeping with this daddy? I have nothing against it. I'm just curious. Squeamishly wrinkled his mouth and shrugged his shoulders for credibility. He's my director. What do you care? You've never taken much interest in my personal life. You've never cared what I do in my spare time. You always had Leslie first, and I was so on the sidelines. I don't have a problem with that. I'll say more. I assumed Leslie wouldn't stay with her parents and would definitely come back. I knew Grandma wouldn't let you go to a party or restaurant alone. That's why I came to see you. I wanted to look her in the eye and see how you behave. Why? I have nothing to lose. I hate your Leslie. I can't stand the sight of her. Let her cry. Let her worry. At least she'll be in my shoes for a while. She'll know what it's like to pick up scraps from the table and sitting on the bench forever. Footsteps sounded outside the door. The principal strode barefoot into the bathroom, turned on the water. Selena stayed close to the door like a tigress guarding the peace of her elderly lover. Resentment at Selena, at himself, at Leslie, squeezed his chest, pressed a slab of concrete so hard that it was hard to breathe. The revelation struck invisible strings in his soul. I never thought I could screw up like this. If you want to know the details, I'll continue. I heard when Leslie came in. I specifically brought up the fact that it was time for us to break up. I saw her open the door. The principal came into the kitchen. He ignored John and sat down at the dining room table. I was going to have Selena make me some coffee, but I changed my mind. I won't bother you. I'm going home. My wife makes excellent coffee. Squinting at one eye, he chuckled. Selena, will you walk me out? He smiled warmly and added, young man, I hope you have enough sense not to raise a hand to a girl. John rolled his eyes. Oh my God, what have I been through all this for? Don't worry, Grandpa. I'll be leaving practically right behind you. You can go back to your grandmother. Your granddaughter will not be touched. You can keep seeing her. I was just passing through. Selena went to see her overnight guest off, and John gritted his teeth, mentally saying goodbye to his past, hammering nails into the lid of his own coffin. As soon as the door slammed shut behind him, he spoke again. What the hell did I do with you? I thought you really loved me. And you? I came here to ask you to live with me. My sister's on vacation in Egypt. She called this morning. She said Leslie's already found herself a great dude. She's making out with him on every corner. After I talked to her, I went straight to your place, and there it was. Bummer again. And it turns out no one was expecting me. I smiled strained and went out, and before he left, he tilted his head to the side and said, don't pay attention and don't make my words mean anything. It's a pity I didn't see this grandfather at your place sooner. Perhaps things would have been very different. I had to pay attention to Leslie. Some kind of impenetrable armor. Honest to God. I thought the ice would break tonight. I was convinced that after the party, we'd wake up in bed together in the morning. But once again she blew it. What a mean little bitch. I'm so mad at her. Ignoring the specific and transparent hints, she said goodbye dryly outside her room. After the door closed behind her, I wanted to just score on everything and with maximum pleasure to send this unfulfilled idea to hell. Let her rest in peace. Crying in a corner, complaining about his hard and unhappy fate. But after thinking, all the same decided to accept her rules of the game, spitting on his wounded ego, to take control, calm down, and still reach the cherished finish line. I found the door handle by feel, pushed it and fell into my room with my back. I'm blocking the hallway. John, I'm sorry. I'm not ready to spend the night with a man I don't know. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. John didn't say anything, just stared at her like a local aborigine. A sour smirk appeared on his face. He held up his hands, nodding his head in agreement. I know what you mean, he said, as if he didn't expect anything else. He took a couple steps back, waved playfully, turned and headed for his room. Good night, John, I shouted after him. I shut the door quickly. Oh, thank God. I thought it would be a lot worse. I'd have to fight back for a long time. I had prepared a speech in advance that sex with men I didn't know was not only bad for a woman's self-esteem, but also increased the risk of catching an infection. When they were walking to the room together, I replayed the clever words in my head several times so that I wouldn't be embarrassed and take the matter quite seriously. I shuddered, remembering how she turned off all possible restraints and let me say unacceptable things. Thank God that she remembered in time and did not invite him to the room for the traditional in such cases, a cup of green tea. God, what will he think of her? She acted like a burned-out prostitute at the party. And on the other hand, let her think whatever she wants. His head on his shoulders isn't just for wearing a hat. Back from Salinas, John collapsed on the bed without undressing. He felt bad that he had grown a huge virtual boil on his heel, and now he didn't know what to do with it. Hearing the melody of his phone, reluctantly looked at the screen. It was the landlady calling. Hello, John, good morning. It's really not that good a morning. I want to warn you to find a new place to live and vacate the apartment within 10 days. But you assured us that we could live as long as we wanted, reminded the landlady of her own words. Over the past year, she and Leslie have re-wallpapered, put in new linoleum, changed the plumbing. And now he's supposed to move out and give it to her. You see, John, my in-laws are coming in 10 days. No one expected them to come back to the USA. Please understand me correctly and vacate the apartment within 10 days. You will not be renewed for the next month. Once again, I apologize and prepare to move. There were short beeps in the phone. That's what I always liked about the landlady, so it's a minimum of questions and a maximum of business. She put me in front of the fact and goodbye. And you can go wherever you want. Asleep, Leslie could not understand where the familiar melody was ringing in her ears. And when she realized, she groaned disappointedly. What kind of people, even on vacation, do not give a rest? Without looking at the screen, answered. Leslie, hi. It's John. Eyes instantly opened. This asshole had the nerve to call me. I wanted to drop the call, but I answered. Hey, what do you want? Did I wake you up? Tell me what the emergency is. Let's skip the details. I dryly responded so he wouldn't get too excited. Leslie, Emma wants you out of the apartment in 10 days. Do I have to pack your things myself, or will you be here by then? There was silence in the phone. He didn't give up hope that she would come, and maybe they could talk. My parents will come and get all my stuff. You and I don't need to see each other. Even though the room was stuffy, Leslie was shaking with chills. She seemed to be freezing with each passing second from her own powerlessness. She still couldn't get her head around the fact that they were strangers to each other. She couldn't stop herself from crying. I understand. Forgive me if you can. My sister says you're having a good time, and you're having a good vacation. I swallowed loudly to get rid of the tension. My heart was turning inside out under my ribs. I wanted to scream loudly that I didn't want to break up. It's none of your business. I'm a free girl, and I'm not going to answer to anyone. Leslie dropped the call, and he wanted to talk. Life's a hell of a thing, he said aloud, face buried in the pillow, and groaned softly, wishing this nightmare would end soon. A week went by. John never found the apartment. Sophia came to visit. Together with the grandmother, in complete silence, they packed Leslie's things, talked only when necessary. All questions were answered dryly and strictly to the point. Mostly they answered, "No, we don't know. It doesn't concern you." Why, you should know. Leslie's things were taken out, and I looked at her keychain for a long time and couldn't understand when I had managed to get to such a point. Hey, Tosha, did you find the apartment? Selena asked. Despite the fact that they parted not very well, she sometimes called and was interested in his hard bachelor life. Move in with me. And what about your daddy? Just get lost, take offense, and never call again. No, we broke up. Actually, we were never together, just met sometimes. Tosha, I'm pregnant. It's your baby. If you don't believe me, let's take a test. Vadim has 3 children, 4 grandchildren besides his wife, and several mistresses besides me. He doesn't need children on the side, and he takes this issue very seriously. John was silent. He was not ready for such a turn of events. What children? Who would believe her? Let her tell her daddy what she wants. He was tired of her and her mood swings. He's confused about who she loves and who she hates. If this is just another move to get back together, he's out. No, it's not gonna happen again. Ava, don't even get your hopes up. I'm just letting you know. I just wanted you to know. I'm going to have the baby. I don't get it. Is this some kind of joke? After I caught you in bed with a man, you still hope for something. I clarified, barely restraining myself not to laugh. Selena's insolence was beyond all imaginable and unthinkable limits. Her words were more like blackmail. Think what you want. I'm not going to run after you. I'm just letting you know. If you don't want to believe me, don't believe me. I didn't want to tell you anything at all. I assumed you'd take it personally, but I thought you should know. How you feel about it is up to you. I answered as confidently as if the conversation wasn't about who's the lucky father, but about the inclement weather outside the window. Whether it's going to rain today or whether the clouds will pass by. Calm. No pathos. No arrogance. No high-pitched tones. Do you really think that even if the test comes back positive, I'll marry you? The conversation took an unexpected turn. I don't know why I said it. Maybe because she was always against him marrying Leslie. Always nagging him about it and saying he and his future wife want a couple. Calm down, I can't be upset. Pregnant women need to be spoken to more patiently. I'm worried about you, by the way. I offered you a temporary place to stay until you find a roof over your head. If you don't like it, you can always pack up and leave. No one's gonna hold you by force. These are different times. Everyone has freedom of choice. John went to the window. He closed his eyes tiredly. He pressed the bridge of his nose with 2 fingers, thinking about the best course of action. And while he was thinking about her suggestion, Selena spoke again. You know, I've been thinking about your and Leslie's failed wedding again. Sooner or later, but you would have divorced anyway. Her voice changed to a loud whisper. You didn't love each other. There was no spark between you. And between us, they always flew at jet speed. Pack your things and move in with me. I'll take such good care of you that in a month you won't want to look for a new place. You'll see, you won't regret it. Or are you still hoping Leslie will forgive you? Selena, are you crazy? It came out involuntarily, but she only snorted. Leslie's name had always been spoken with a strange disdain. And now she said it with such hatred, as if she'd always considered her blood enemy. You've got nothing to lose. Showing off like a prom date. I'm offering you the perfect opportunity. You don't have anywhere to move anyway. Once again, you won't regret it. John was still looking out the window confused, quickly realizing that Selena could move some of his things today. And tomorrow to come to the apartment with her and collect the rest. To Selena's credit. Credit that she actually offered him a pretty good option. Leslie looked at the guy sunbathing on the neighboring sunbed. She persuaded herself not to get upset, and in no way to show that she was beginning to slowly fall into a real panic. They're going home tomorrow. It was a great vacation, a lot of fun. As they say, a little bit of everything. And her new friend, to whom for these 2 weeks finally attached, will remain a resort hobby, a pleasant memory, and a painkiller pill for all ills. I tried to behave casually, but only to squeeze out a satisfied smile on my face. It did not work. No matter how hard I tried, my lips were frozen in one position and didn't want to stretch a single millimeter. I wondered if he and I would ever meet again. I don't think so. He's not interested in such fools. For 2 weeks I could not bury deeper my stupid principles and cross the line, which I drew for myself with red paint, and could not even just step on it. And now she should realize that as soon as they arrive in the city, she will culturally wave goodbye and immediately throw her phone number in the blacklist. The vacation romance is over, which means she'll never be in his life again. And that's the right thing to do. Maybe John was right to have an alternate airfield. He's probably sick of her inappropriate principles, too. Well, she's done her job. You wanted to forget your fiancé. Almost forgot. No. Of course, the bitter memories haven't gone away. Until now, my heart was still wrapped in a tight knot of resentment. But now the name of the other John, who had settled in her head with enviable regularity and completely taken over her grey matter, was more and more often in her head. It had only been 1 day since she'd returned from vacation. She'd slept in, talked to her relatives, showed her pictures, put her things in their proper places. She couldn't resist asking questions and told about the guy she met and had a great time all the days without exception. The news that the failed fiancé moved permanently to Selena took quite calmly. No tragedy occurred. It turned out that in fact they invented love for themselves. She disappeared exactly at the moment when they learned about each other a little more than they should. Maybe that's why they broke up so quickly and without any insults. What was more worrying was the other thing. Not for a second did not part with the phone, because still did not give up hope to hear the voice of another, a beautiful ghost from the best vacation. Her new acquaintance, who by pure coincidence his parents had also named John. She flinched at every phone call until finally she saw the long-awaited number on the screen. My heart stopped for a few seconds, as if preparing for another march. "Hello," I whispered with a gasp, simultaneously holding the air, because my lungs refused to fulfill their direct function at that moment. I breathed practically through and through, afraid to miss a single word. "Hi, don't you think it's been a while? I woke up today and realized I really miss a girl with strong principles. Let's meet tonight." Her voice sounded so familiar and close. Still not believing it, I asked again, "Did I mishear? You want to ask me out on a date?" I held my breath again. I gestured to my grandmother to be silent and not to interfere with the conversation. Grandma was like a statue standing next to me, afraid not only to move, but even to breathe. "I really want to. I told you that I missed you very much," repeated almost syllabically. "I don't mind," I stuttered. I wanted to scream. "I've been waiting for your call, to reprimand you for waiting over 24 hours. But I decided not to force the issue just yet." Leslie had long since cancelled the call. She rushed to reorganize her closet. Today, she wanted to look especially beautiful and at the same time natural. And grandmother still stood in the same place and tried to understand why her bloodchild was so cheerful. Leslie tried to restrain herself, reminded that she had no reasons to be happy about life and they were unlikely to appear. But she couldn't help noting that the first step to rapprochement was made, and then what will be? "Hi." John was waiting for her near the entrance with flowers, and as soon as she came out into the street, he stepped to her and handed her a bouquet. "You look great as always." He gallantly opened the car door and helped Leslie into the passenger seat. He walked around the car and sat next to her. "Where are we going?" He asked a question, and without waiting for an answer, continued. "The weather's nice. Maybe we'll walk a little in the center and then have dinner somewhere." "I don't care," wanted to add, "if only with you," but I prudently kept silent. Let things take their course. She had already rushed once, when she had rushed headlong to rent an apartment with her darling. Enough. Let her think what she wants, but she will not give up her principles. Tell me about yourself. I don't really know much about you. I asked out loud, but I thought to myself, I'm always rushing things. He'll fantasize and think that I have serious plans for him. The waiter put a carafe of juice and a basket of bread on the table. He said that the order would be brought in a few minutes, wished me a pleasant evening and left. Leaning back in his chair, John waited until the waiter was a decent distance away, looked into her eyes and smiled. I'm not married. I will not hide. I dated a girl and even tried with her to build a joint life, but realized that we are not suitable for each other. Broke up about 1.5 years ago. Looked at Leslie's incredulous face, shrugged his shoulders and offered, "If you don't believe me, I can show you my passport." Opened my purse and looked at Leslie again. "You want to see it, or will you take my word for it?" "I will," she answered firmly and held out her hand. "Take a look." Leslie opened the marital status. When she saw that there was no stamp in her passport, she praised herself for not giving up. "And what do you work?" Blushing from her own curiosity, she asked the next question. Why? She should know who she went on a date with. She had answered his numerous questions back in Egypt. She had little to hide. The only dark spot escaped from the crown, and this fact in his biography Leslie was not going to keep quiet. Honestly told her that her fiancé preferred someone else. "I'm an entrepreneur. Together with a friend recently opened a company for the sale of building materials, and before that worked as a simple clerk. Tired of pants in the office to wipe. Decided with a friend to try. So far, so good." Tapping on the desk. He stopped talking just long enough for the waiter to set the food on the table. Leslie momentarily forgot what else she wanted to ask. So passed several minutes of complete silence until she heard again. "By the way, tomorrow is my mom's birthday. You're invited with me. I'll pick you up at 6:30. You don't have to worry about the present. I've already bought it." A confident look in his eyes, as if to say that no refusals are accepted. He prepared to persuade, but to his surprise Leslie nodded, confirming her agreement. "I didn't expect that. I thought you'd say no. You're doing great. That's great. I won't have to convince you that you'll have to get to know your mom anyway. I think you two are gonna like each other. Don't worry, I'll always be there for you." He laughed again at her surprised look and covered her hand with his palm, which seemed unusually soft and warm, and reassured her. "I want us to go on seeing each other. I won't hide the fact that I think about you all the time. I really like you." Is he psychic by any chance? I look at him and realize that he has now voiced my thoughts word for word, because those are exactly the words I wanted to hear from him right now. "Let's give it a try," I said, eyes downcast. "What do you want? I'm sick of you." I wasn't at Leslie's. I was playing pool with the guys today. "Any more questions? Stop controlling me. You're not my wife." Emitting the smell of booze and falling from fatigue, squeezed out of himself, mentally preparing for another scandal. Who knew Selena's head was so messed up? Living with her in the same apartment was unbearable. Not only that, hiding behind her toxicosis practically did nothing, so slowly ate his brains, pretending to be almost seriously ill. He didn't feel like going home at all lately. He'd hang out with his friends late into the night, sometimes pick up a hooker and spend the night with her in a hotel. Such entertainment liked it much better than the constant reproaches, remarks and unfounded attacks from her side. "You were seen outside Leslie's house. Why are you hanging around there? You're embarrassing me. Will you stop doing all this nonsense? If you're seen there again, I won't be able to take care of myself." Selena held her still perfectly flat belly in a mannerly manner, throwing John an indignant look. What a jerk. He knows Leslie's seeing someone else, and he's still hoping for something. Yes, they have. And they're gonna see me a lot more times. Because I rented an apartment in the building next door. I'm doing a little remodeling right now. I was gonna move out of your place next week. I'm sick of you. But I feel like I can't wait till next week. I've had enough. He ran his palm down my throat. And don't you dare blackmail me with your baby. Not without a DNA test. John grabbed his bag and started throwing his stuff in it. Where are you going? Are you out of your mind? It's the middle of the night. I sobbed, grabbed my shirt out of his hands and ostentatiously put it back in the closet. She clutched her hand to her heart, trying a neighboring building. He didn't hesitate to trying to educate the careless neighbor. I turned on the music, started the car and calmly drove home. Let her jump off the balcony. He didn't care anymore. Let her dump her stuff. She'll run to pick them up herself. She's got all night. This kind of Mexican passion had reached a boiling point in their relationship. Let Selena eat her own brains now. He wasn't going to compete with the cockroaches in her head. He couldn't beat them. John had realized that on practically the second or third day he'd moved in with her. He hoped and wanted to believe that it was just a temporary phenomenon, but every day he was convinced that he was lying to himself. John picked Leslie up at 6:30 sharp. He had been standing in traffic for a long time. He thought he would be a little late, but he still arrived on time. Leslie stood tense as a string. The air itself seemed to ring with her tremendous tension. Her smile was gone, giving way to a puzzled and worried expression. Are you upset about something? John was worried. It was the first time he'd invited a girl to a family reunion since the breakup. No, I'm just a little nervous. I'm already regretting it. You and I had just started dating, she said quietly with her lips dry with excitement. She looked at him pitifully, as if trying to refuse her words, to cancel and stay home. No, you're my girlfriend and you should be with me. Let's not fill our heads with nonsense. Everything's gonna be okay. You'll see. I understood everything, but my gray matter refused to accept anything new. It seemed that after breaking up with that first John, she couldn't survive a second betrayal. Only time, the man who was always near her, brought relief. And it was only through his persistence that, in her own try to get rid of the hatred and the constant fear that it could happen again, and then she would stop believing in people. How many times has she tried to let go of the situation, to wish Selena and John happiness, but it's like there was a block saying I can't. Maybe because people like that just don't deserve happiness. I hope your relatives don't eat me. Buckle my seatbelt, I said, trying to translate my words into a joke and diffuse the situation. Chin up. It's gonna be okay. I wish I could punch your ex-boyfriend in the face. I'm itching to do it. He messed up, and I have to clean it up and explain that not all men are like that. Gently covered her hands with his palm, as if trying to take some of the excitement on himself, gently touched her lips. Let's not think about bad things. Everything was really going well in the cafe. The guests were having fun, dancing. No one pestered with stupid questions. John was always near, and in just an hour, Leslie was chatting with the guests as if she had known them all her life and did not feel any excitement. Without any shyness, participated in contests, danced with everyone, and even at the end of the evening, had the courage to make a toast. There you are, and you were worried. I told you I have worldly relatives. By the way, my mom whispered to me that she really liked you. They'd been hugging outside Leslie's driveway for about 30 minutes. They said goodbye to each other several times, but John wouldn't let her go. Why don't we go back to my place? Leslie, we're adults. Call your parents so they don't worry. Tell them you're in good hands. Looking at her windows, he suggested what he thought was the best option. Ooh, what people. Leslie, I finally see you. Is this your new boyfriend? Leslie turned around. Behind her stood her ex-boyfriend. Hearing his voice, John put his arm around her waist and pulled her closer to him. What are you doing here? Just passing through, I hope. Or have you confused us with Selena again? As John pulled her even tighter against him and assessed his opponent, she prepared herself for a verbal battle. I'm gonna be passing by a lot now. There, pointing with his hand at the neighboring house, continued. In this house, I rented a studio. If you get bored, come on in. Apartment 79. Just come without your fiancé. We'll have tea." He grinned, winking, as if he was deliberately provoking and asking for trouble. "Oh, come on. Didn't you find any more apartments in other neighborhoods? Or did you and Selena get bored without me? Oh yeah. Oh, that reminds me. You're expecting a new addition. You're really going to need a bigger apartment soon." John grinned, angrily thrusting up his chin as if he'd been unfairly lied to. He snorted angrily, saying something ridiculous. "Leslie, don't listen to anyone. I've always loved only you. And what happened between us? This is some kind of misunderstanding. I stayed at Selena's for a few days until I got an apartment, and then I moved right out. You and I are even now. You haven't been wasting your time either, I see." He smiled ingratiatingly. "My door is always open to you. You can come at any time. We'll have a cup of tea, talk." He sat down on a bench, took out a pack of cigarettes, a lighter, took a drag as if he wasn't going anywhere. "Leslie, let me walk you out," John offered. He took her hand and led her to the door. They went into the entryway with him. They took the elevator to the 6th floor. "Don't pay attention to him. He's provoking you on purpose. Let him be mad. I'm never going back to him anyway." I put my arm around his neck, and pressed my heated cheek against his face. "I'm glad I have you." When I didn't hear anything back, I asked. Leslie was thunderstruck. She thought she had misheard. It was noisy outside. They were standing near the playground. Boys were playing soccer. The fans were shouting so loudly that they couldn't hear anything. "Since when did you have trouble hearing?" I said, "Give the money back. You got your own sponsor now. Let him support you. You've got a good thing going. You took a vacation for my money, found yourself a man. And it's my fault. And warn him to keep his hands to himself next time. He's lucky I was drunk last night, or he'd have gotten it from me too." He nodded resolutely, shrugging his shoulders as if he was shaken by the cruel injustice. Leslie's eyes flashed back to the slideshow of their happy past, when Tosha had lied shamelessly that he'd do any crime for her if he had to. The storyteller, just nervously smoking in the corner and crying that he was not so good at it. Well done. Bravo. There should be a big round of applause here. Tosha really deserves it. Although I can't think of any other way to call him but a total asshole. I never thought he was capable of such a thing. I'm still in shock from his prank, and I don't know who suffered more in this story. I always thought it was me. But in John's version, he's the injured party. "Do you really want me to give you the money?" I asked, still hoping I'd misunderstood him. After all, up to a certain point, it seemed that there was no kinder and kinder person. "And why not? If you met your destiny on vacation, let him pay for your trip. I think it's the right thing to do. What did you want? I should have charged you interest, but that's the way it is. I'm being kind today. You can keep the interest for a new wedding dress. Unless, of course, you run away from the wedding again." He looked meaningfully, as if insinuating that all men are like that, and any levac only strengthens the marriage. "I'm not actually getting married. Although who am I telling this to?" Leslie faltered. A distant corner of consciousness realized that it was useless to appeal to conscience. Let him choke on his money. They will not bring him happiness anyway. And to her too. "All right, I'll pay you back. Every penny of it. I hope I don't owe you anything else. Think now. What if you remember something else? It'll be too late. I'm warning you now." John wasn't talking. I guess he was thinking about what else he could talk me into. Or maybe he didn't expect me to agree so quickly. It seemed that he was even upset when he realized that he hadn't succeeded in making me angry and emotional. And all I wanted to do was end this worthless conversation and run away. I didn't have time for cottage cheese and sour cream. I had to rush home to my parents and together with them to calculate whether they can give me the necessary amount of money. "Why are you so out of breath?" as if someone was chasing you. Grandma asked me as she opened the front door. Where are the groceries? Did a demon chase you? Leslie quickly shook her head. Worse. Throwing off her sneakers so that they flew in different directions and waving to her grandmother, she went straight to the kitchen. She took a seat on the corner sofa. I took the newspaper from my father and put it beside me. I have a huge favor to ask of you. Borrow some money. Here it is again, 25. You're not going out again, are you? Are you going to work? Granny slapped her knees. Laughing, she stared at me with a puzzled look. My parents were modestly silent, as if preparing for another slap, trying to take the hit again. I ran into John outside the store. He demanded that I pay him back the money I rolled into Egypt. All hope for you. I don't have that kind of money. I'll pay him back little by little. I just blurted it out in one breath. Grandma thought that her granddaughter's eye twitched from frustration. And all because of that bastard. What happened? He broke the wood, and now he's counting his money. It's like he's the only one who invested. He seemed so nice, so courteous, so polite, and then when we split up, it just came out of him, top and bottom. I should have gone to the store with Leslie. She could have explained to him who owed what to whom and how much. Of course we will. How much do you need? Your mother has your money for the wedding dress. We'll add the rest. Don't get so excited. It's his money. Let him take it. We don't want what's not ours. My father reassured us. If he thinks he's doing the right thing, we won't object, as long as he doesn't leak your name, and the rest is nothing. We'll make money. We'll make more money. Leslie immediately texted her ex-boyfriend, thanked him for his interest-free sponsorship, and then sent the full amount at once, not forgetting to make a note that his phone was blacklisting him. You don't have to answer it. John was sitting in his apartment. I looked through the photos in the phone book, deleting all of Leslie's pictures without exception. The message about crediting the money beeped. Seemed like a blessing in disguise. Keep making repairs. The extra money had come in. What more do you need? We could hit the nightclub again tonight. Have some fun. Take the edge off. But I felt empty and bitter. 2 beers had made his heart beat haggard and heavy. Why had he reminded Leslie about the money? He could have passed it by, but he didn't want to hurt her. Not just bite her, but with all his might, so that it hurts. Well, he was pretty good at it. He sighed heavily and leaned back on the couch, putting his hands behind his head. There were no curtains on the windows yet, and the window in Leslie's room was clearly visible. I tried not to look in that direction, but my eyes clung to it and instantly found the object in question. I could have thrown out the trash, or at least washed the dishes that had accumulated in the sink, but there was absolutely nothing to do. Leslie's message hit her hands and discouraged her from doing anything. The sun was shining through the window. Usually in such weather, he and Leslie walked along the seafront, along the coastal streets. But today, such weather did not please him at all. It played on his nerves, and it was impossible to cope with this mood. An incoming call distracted him from sad memories. Grabbing the phone and seeing Selena's smiling face on the screen, he rolled his eyes. Taking a deep breath, he switched the phone to silent mode. He knew she wouldn't rest on one call. If Selena got something on her mind, she could make 30 calls in a row. You're the only thing she needed to be happy about. Her screaming was still in my ears. I got up, got another bottle of beer out of the fridge. I went to the window. When he saw the car of Leslie's new fiancé pulling up below, he grinned wryly, though it was no laughing matter. All the resentment inside was curling up into a tight lump as soon as he saw Leslie's car pulling out of the driveway. Distracted by a message from Selena, "You'll be sorry." There was a disgruntled smiley face at the bottom, but the message was ignored. It wasn't about her right now. The phone was on silent anyway, so let her do whatever she wanted. He was more interested in where Leslie and her new fiancé were going. 20 minutes later, some photos arrived from Selena again. He wanted to delete them right away, but his eye fell on a familiar polo. I took a closer look. Shirts, pants, jeans, socks, boxers were lying carelessly near the dumpster. Homeless people were shoveling clothes into bags, and some daredevil was trying on his sheepskin coat. John picked up Leslie. When he got in the car, she looked at his face first, and finding no visible abrasions, asked, "Did you get into a fight with John yesterday?" "A little. I had to explain to the man that I'm a cheapskate and terribly possessive." "Oh, did he complain already?" "I didn't expect him to. Yesterday he was yelling at me that he had. Of your kind, I won't tell you how many, but the numbers were impressive. I'm fine with him. If necessary, I can do it again. It's not difficult for me." Turning the key in the ignition, shrugged his shoulders in surprise. I saw him outside the store and immediately guessed whose hands it was. The black eye shone cooler than sunlight. "Fastening the seatbelt?" she asked. "Where are we going?" "The weather's nice. We'll walk around a bit, get something to eat, and then we'll go to my place." "Your place?" I turned my head. "Why your place?" "Just kidding." He laughed, then continued. "We can walk in the park. There's an exhibition of ornamental plants today. Or go to the artist house for an exhibition of paintings. It's up to you." Anxious thoughts swarmed through his mind. John couldn't think at first what was going on. He was already shattered, practically broken in half. And Selina had decided to bury him and tamp him down with earth to make sure. Well, she did a pretty good job of it. She tamped down the earth to her heart's content. When I saw Selina's incoming call, I angrily threw the phone away, but then I decided to answer it. "Are you out of your mind?" He gritted his teeth. "I warned you. Why did you do that? I'm gonna come over there and blow your head off. Are you normal? I can't believe I didn't see the bullet in your stupid head." I couldn't find the right words out of anger. An incomprehensible emptiness was spreading inside at an incredible rate. I didn't care about Leslie, about her fiancé, about Selina throwing away his stuff. Something had to be done about it, but it was impossible to overcome the state of indifference, and I didn't want to. It was like a magnet pulling her to the bottom of a huge ravine, and there was no point in getting out of it. "There's still something left. If you don't come today, the rest of the bags will be in the dump tomorrow. I've warned the homeless to pull up by evening," smirked Selina. "You know, throw it away. Don't be shy. Make your new friends happy. It's good that I was smart enough not to leave the documents with you. It would have been difficult to recover. That's all I need." Satisfied with his decision, John dropped the call. The mood was worse than ever. Just rip it off and throw it away. I wanted to break something, smash something. Turn off the fucking phone, drape something over the window, and just be in complete silence. Think. Take a breath and figure out how to deal with all this bullshit. I shoved the card in the back pocket of my jeans and headed to the store. Decided to get drunk and disconnect from everything that was weighing him down. In the morning, he woke up to the buzzing of his cell phone. Before he finally passed out, he turned it on. "Hello." I lifted myself up on the pillow and answered in a sleepy voice. "John, why aren't you at work?" "What time is it?" I asked, not feeling the least bit worried. The sound of his voice made my head ache and spin as if on a merry-go-round. "Are you still asleep? Let's get ready and rush to the office. In 15 minutes, the briefing," grumbled the boss. "I warn you, if you will not be at the meeting, you can write an application for dismissal, and I will gladly sign it. Do you understand me? I don't know what's going on with you lately. So what if you broke up with your fiancé? That's no reason to drink every day and not go to work. Stan, don't yell. You're the one who's making my head spin. Do what you want with me, but I'm not going to be able to go to work this afternoon, and that's not for sure." I opened the refrigerator, took out a bottle of mineral water, and without paying attention to the boss, began to drink greedily. "Take it out on yourself. Stan dropped the call. Screw all of you. Let them fire you. Maybe it's for the best. It's time for a change in his life. He'll go to his parents' house in the county seat. They'll talk a little and they won't go anywhere. They'll take their big-aged child for re-education. It's been 2 years. I didn't like the way he looked at you, grumbled the husband, taking off his jacket and massaging his neck with his hands. Don't make it up. You know I don't need anyone but you. You found someone to be jealous of. It's funny. I never noticed it before. Taking off her dress, Leslie grinned. There was no reason to. We never went out with your ex-boyfriend in the same company. He's been staring at you all night. It's annoying. I just wanted to remind him again that I'm very possessive. Tonight, they were attending a wedding at Leslie's friend's house. John was one of the invited guests. After that meeting outside the store, they never saw each other again. In the meantime, she and John got married, had a son, and they never thought of Toga again. Oliver was born 10 months ago. At first, Daddy was afraid to even approach him, let alone hold him in his arms. But he managed to overcome his panic fear and literally in a week without problems could change diapers, swaddle him, put him to bed, feed him. All I need is for you two to fight again. That would be funny. Although, what's a wedding without a fight? I continued the conversation, though I was sure my husband would never allow it. Moreover, there was no reason for it. When the husband left to smoke, it so happened that John came up to him and his girlfriend and the three of them talked a little. I never took any interest in his personal life. Was pretty sure they were living together with Selena. I heard that she gave him a daughter, but it turns out John's moved back in with his parents. He lives in the district center, works as a chauffeur. He's still single and doesn't intend to be. Recognized his daughter, pays alimony. Selena never married, and the daughter lives almost constantly at her mother's house. Selena constantly has no time for herself. She arranges her life, going to nightclubs and constantly arguing on the phone with John about not paying enough child support. From a playful slap on the soft spot on Leslie came a wave of indignation. Honey, why? I didn't do anything to you. And for undeserved jealousy, you'll be punished tonight. I'll sleep on the couch tonight. Pulls a set of linens out of the closet. No, my love. I'm ready to take the blame and beg for your forgiveness all night long. I'll consider your offer. Followed by a second slap. Before she can turn around and get indignant again, Leslie only gasps. John gently picks her up in his arms and carries her into the bedroom. He gently lowers her onto the bed. You know I can't sleep without you.
Having colored the last cloud, 5-year-old Maria looked at her drawing once more and smiled dreamily, and then went to the kitchen where her mother was preparing dinner. "Mommy, I drew you a picture," she told her mother, holding out a piece of paper. The woman smiled and, having washed her hands, sat down on a stool. "Let's see," she said to her daughter, taking another masterpiece from her hands. "Well, tell me who you have depicted here." The girl came to the table and, showing with her finger one by one all the people and animals depicted by her, began to explain to her mother who is who. "This is you, Mommy. This is Daddy. This is my big brother. This is me. And this is my little sister. And this is our cat and dog." A happy smile played on the child's lips. Selena stroked her daughter's head and smiled a little sadly. She had given birth to Maria at the age of 25 to a man she loved very much, except that it turned out that his plans were not to become a father, and having learned of Selena's pregnancy, he urged her to have an abortion, putting her in front of a choice. And Selena made her choice. Having collected all her things, she moved in with her mom, and they never saw Maria's father again. "Is it beautiful, Mommy?" asked the girl, looking at her mother. "Very beautiful," Selena answered. Maria had long dreamed of having a big family. She watched with sadness when fathers played with children on the playground. They sat on their shoulders, caught from the slide, swung on the swings and together in the sandbox molded dolls. The girl believed that one day she too would have a father, and also an older brother who would protect her and help her do her homework, and a little sister whom she would take care of, and when she grew up, she would become her best friend. There were no animals in their house because her grandmother was allergic to wool, and Maria, like any child, dreamed of a pet. But she didn't know who she wanted more, a cat or a dog, so in her drawing she depicted both, believing that one day she would have them. Selena had been working at the neighborhood dentist's office for 10 years. She liked her job, but for the past few months she had been going there as if it were hard labor. Relations with the new head of the department did not work out, but not hers alone, and she was already looking for a new place. And an unexpected call from a former colleague set things right. "So, come to us," said the woman, having listened to Selena's complaints. "We need a doctor right now, and you have good experience." "Veronica, I'd love to. Are you sure they'll take you?" Selena immediately perked up. "Of course she will. I'll put in a good word for you." Veronica had been working in a private clinic for a couple of years and was happy with everything. She called Selena back the next day and told her she could come in for an interview tomorrow. The owner of the clinic, Alexander, carefully read all the documents and looked at Selena with a smile. "Well, welcome to us," he said. "When are you ready to start?" Selena smiled back. "I have to work 2 weeks at my old place, but I could start working here on my days off," she replied. "Why the weekend? Work your ass off and then come back after you're fired." Selena walked home with a happy smile on her lips. The schedule was better here and the salary was twice as much. 2 weeks flew by quickly, and she was happy to start working at the new place. "How do you like it here?" Veronica asked after a week. "I like it very much." "Veronica, thank you very much." Selena looked at her friend with gratitude. "That's great." Veronica smiled enigmatically. "And our Alexander obviously likes you," she said. "How do you know that?" Selena asked. She hadn't noticed anything like that, although she liked her new boss. All she knew about him was that he was 37 years old and loved his job. He was an interesting man, and Selena had no doubt that he was married, even though he didn't have a wedding ring on his finger. "I've seen the way he looks at you. I'm telling you. We'll marry you off," Veronica said. "Isn't he married?" Selena asked immediately. Details of his personal life I do not know, but he's been divorced for 3 years. The only thing is that he has a son, Slavka. You'll see him sometime. Alexander sometimes brings him to the clinic. He seems to be a normal kid, 10 years old. Maybe that's why he didn't marry again. Not everyone needs husbands with children. Selena understood that perfectly well. She'd had several affairs over the years, but no one was in a hurry to marry her, not wanting to take care of her daughter. Veronica had been right, and a romance began between Selena and Alexander. "Maria, tomorrow we go out not alone with you, but in a very pleasant company," Selena told her daughter one night. "And with whom?" she asked, looking at her mother curiously. "Remember, you always wanted to have a father and an older brother." Selena smiled, because today Sasha had proposed to her, which she had gladly accepted, finally feeling happy for the first time in so many years. "And we'll go out with them?" the girl asked excitedly. "With them," Selena replied. "Mommy, will we have a little sister and a cat and a dog too?" "Well, they have a cat," said Selena, "because just recently Alexander bought a kitten. As for the rest, I can't say yet." Maria was looking forward to Saturday. She found her old drawing and began to look at it. "Thank you, Santa Claus," she said. After all, she had written him a letter for New Year's Eve, not asking for toys, but asking him to fulfill her long-held dream of a big family. On Saturday, Maria quickly ate her breakfast. She couldn't wait to go to the playground, where her future father and brother would be waiting for her and her mom. The man sat down and handed Maria a box containing a large brown puppy that could walk and bark. "Hello, Maria," he said, smiling good-naturedly at the girl. Your mom said that you dream of having a dog. Of course it's not a real one, but we'll be sure to get a live puppy later too. Honestly, the girl asked excitedly. Of course, honestly, replied the man. We'll take a walk now, and then we'll go to our house, and you'll play with Caramel. And she is small? Asked the girl. Very small. I'll show her to you now. The man took out his phone and showed Maria a picture of a kitten. And the girl glowed. She's so pretty, she said. Alexander got up and called his son, who was running around the playground with the boys. Tony, come here. The boy came over to them. He didn't look happy. Tony, this is Maria. I told you about her. Hi, he said nonchalantly, turning to look at the running boys. It was obvious that he wanted to run with them, and he wasn't interested in his newly baked sister. Hi, Maria answered, a little upset. Dad, can I go? He asked, looking at his father. Go, said, and looked at Selena. Slavka is not a gift, but I hope you get along with him. Maria was swinging on the swing, looking with genuine adoration at Alexander, who was swinging her. She thought that all her dreams were bound to come true. After the walk, they went to a cafe, where her future father bought her a very tasty ice cream, and then all together went to visit Alexander and Tony, where Maria was not torn away from Caramel. She was not even upset by the fact that Tony did not want to communicate with her, closed in his room. Selena and Alexander got married, and Maria moved into a new spacious apartment where Caramel was waiting for her. She was completely happy with her new life, unlike Tony, who continued to ignore her, as well as Selena, who was trying hard to make the child feel comfortable. Tony, let's have tea. I made your favorite muffins. Selena walked into her husband's son's room. I don't want any, he said without taking his eyes off the computer game. It had been several months since the wedding, but the boy's attitude remained the same. He doesn't accept us, Selena said to her husband one day, sighing heavily. He will. Give him time, replied the man, hugging his wife. The man himself was worried, repeatedly tried to talk to his son, but he only replied that they were complete strangers to him and he did not want to communicate with them at all. Tony did not conflict with neither Selena nor Maria, but just tried to pretend that they did not exist. But as time went on, he softened a little towards his new family. Why are you crying? One day he came into Maria's room when he heard her crying. I have a test tomorrow and I don't understand anything. I for homework put a day, sobbing said the girl. Well, show me what you don't understand, he said, sitting down next to her. Here. Maria put the math book in front of him and showed him the examples she couldn't solve. How easy it is, he said, and began to explain how easy it is to solve. Algebra was very difficult for the girl, while her new brother grasped everything on the fly and was an excellent student, unlike her. Maria listened attentively, trying to understand. They solved a few examples together, and she began to understand more or less what she couldn't understand at all. Thank you, the girl said gratefully. It's okay, you're welcome, he replied. Tony, why don't you like my mom? She's nice, isn't she? Suddenly Maria asked. I like her, the boy answered, smiling a little. He left the room, and Maria looked at him and smiled. She realized that Tony had finally accepted her and her mother. Now all that was missing for her complete happiness was a little sister and a dog. She's so tiny, Maria said, standing by the crib and admiring her newborn baby sister, Yulia. You are like that too, said Selena, hugging her daughter with one arm. Nice. Tony smiled at Selena. I agree, she replied, ruffling his hair. And while she's sleeping, come on, I'll feed you. They quietly left the room, shutting the door as Buddy, their 1.5-year-old beagle dog, immediately rushed at his feet, wagging his tail and twirling happily. You little bully, said Maria, petting the dog. We should take him for a walk. Selena looked at the children. Let's wash our hands, eat lunch and go for a walk. After a quick lunch, the children picked up Buddy and headed outside, and Maria thought that dreams are bound to come true if they come from the heart. I can't wait to get rid of him, Maria sighed, looking at her friend Sarah, with whom they were preparing for the final exams together. And don't tell me, she replied, puzzling over a physics problem. You and I will never solve this abracadabra. When is your brother coming? She looked at her friend. He should be here any minute. Only you ask him, or he will start to attack me again, that he studied for me all these years, Maria said. Tony graduated from school with a gold medal, and she had a few C's for the last year, and one of them was in physics. Since Tony had moved out, her grades had dropped dramatically. When Maria heard someone coming, she went out into the hallway, and there stood Tony, with Nancy hanging around his neck. You're going to strangle her, he said, smiling at her sister, and she unclasped her arms and stood on the floor. Hi. Maria walked over and pecked her brother on the cheek. Sarah looked out of the room and waved at Tony, rewarding him with a smile. Are you studying for your exams, you two-timers? He asked Maria, smiling. With a pleading look in her eyes, the girl looked at her brother. No, and again no. Come on, girls, turn on your brains and yourself, he replied. Please, literally begged Maria, and Sarah put her hands together and brought them to her face. She looked as if the world was about to end. Tony sighed and shook his head disapprovingly. What's there to do with you? I'll just eat first. Why don't you heat up something tasty for me? I'm on my way, Maria answered cheerfully. Sarah, let's go to the kitchen. She smiled at Tony and followed Maria. Well, I'm going for a walk with Buddy, said Nancy, and went to her room to change. Tony left, and satisfied girlfriends, having tea, settled down on the sofa in Maria's room. Maria, I like your brother, Sarah confessed to her friend. Is he seeing anyone? His personal life is shrouded in fog, Maria said with a laugh. Anyway, he hasn't brought anyone here. I think he likes me too. Sarah smiled dreamily. Help me to have an affair with him. How can I help you? Maria asked. Well, we should go out together, maybe to a club. I think that could be arranged, she said. Thank you, Sarah chuckled. What about you and Max? She asked. Maria met Max 4 months ago. He was in his 3rd year at the institute and was 3 years older than Maria. They met, and she liked the young man very much, except that he constantly hinted at intimacy, and the girl was not ready for it. I don't know. Everything seems fine, but he's always hinting at a cupcake. I understand him, but I'm not ready yet. I confessed to my friend Marie. Well, what's a relationship without that? If you're going to keep him, he'll find someone more agreeable. Maria understood that. You're right. We need to make up our minds, she answered, sighing. Do you love him at all? Sarah asked. I think I do. Do you or do you? Maria thought for a moment. She liked Max a lot, but she didn't know if it was love. She had 2 men in her life whom she thought were perfect, and she didn't know Max well enough to know whether he was the one she wanted or not. She also realized that there was no relationship without intimacy, but something inside her told her not to hurry. How long are we going to hold hands? Disgruntled tone asked Max in their last meeting. I'm not ready yet, Maria answered honestly. Not yet. And how long do we have to wait? Listen, Maria, this is a kindergarten, not a relationship. Understand, but I'm not satisfied with this. Let's meet at my place on Saturday. We'll sit down, have a drink, and... He smiled enigmatically. I can't on Saturday. Maria had no plans, and the words came out of her lips. Max gloomed. Sunday? He asked. I don't know yet. Maria shrugged her shoulders. Maria, I thought you were a grown man, and you're acting like a juvenile dynamo. You're rushing me. Max, I've never been with anyone before, so it's not easy for me to decide. She admitted it. Look for yourself. but I'm no longer satisfied to walk hand in hand and kiss in your entrance. Max made it clear that he was ready to end their relationship if it didn't go to the next level. All she kept thinking was that she had to make up her mind and that she should have spent Saturday with him for nothing. "Maria, what's up? Let's go clubbing on Saturday. Would Tony agree to go?" Sarah asked. "I don't know. I don't know if he has a girlfriend or not. I'll ask him, but I can't guarantee that he'll go." After seeing Sarah off, Maria immediately called her brother. "Hi, long time no see." He answered his sister's call with a smile. "Tony, come with us on Saturday to the club," Maria said right away. "With you?" "Well, with me and Sarah. You can bring a friend or two. Don't you have your own company?" he asked. "Sarah likes you. I didn't tell you that." "I know," Tony answered calmly. And nothing. So you're not going to the club without me? No offense." "Shit, Tony, what's wrong?" Maria's been thinking. "She seems like a nice-looking girlfriend. You got a girlfriend?" "I don't have one right now, but that doesn't mean Sarah will." "Don't pry. If you say no, it's no." "What if it's just for company?" "I don't want to. I had plans on Saturday, so no clubs." "That's a shame." By then, Maria sighed and collapsed on the bed. Sarah will be upset, she thought, but for some reason she was glad that her brother didn't like her friend. With Max, Maria agreed to spend Sunday, and on Saturday, she went to the club with Sarah, who had a friend of her sister's working there, and thanks to him, they went quietly, despite their age. Her parents let their daughter go with a squeak, but she said she was going with a large group and not until the morning. After an hour of dancing, Maria noticed Max and her heart froze in her chest for a moment, and a lump came to her throat. Her boyfriend was making out with some girl, obviously older than him, dancing a slow dance with her. His hands were stroking the girl's ass, and Maria suddenly laughed hysterically. "A shoal," said Sarah, watching her friend's boyfriend, "and it's a good thing it didn't come to a cupcake." "Sarah, we agreed that tomorrow we would spend the day together, and everything else was implied," Maria said, and a tear ran down her cheek. "It's good that it turned out that way. I didn't like Max, you know. I just didn't tell you," Sarah confessed. "Let's go to the bar. I'm thirsty," said Maria and brushed a tear off her cheek. "Maybe we shouldn't?" Sarah asked, looking at her friend with sympathy. "We should." Maria headed towards the bar. She felt so bad now that she wanted to get drunk and forget herself. The most she'd had before was a little champagne on New Year's Eve. But here she ordered a whole shot and drank it alone. "Maria, are you crazy?" Sarah groaned, noticing that her friend was dramatically intoxicated. "I'm fine," she replied and asked the bartender to repeat the shot. "Where to?" "Pull over." The girl looked at the bartender and turned to him. "No more, sorry." She took her drunk friend under her arm and dragged her toward the club's exit, hailing a cab on the way. "Tony's address," she said to Maria. "It's close by." Maria mumbled and rested her head on her friend's shoulder. "They're all such assholes. Dogs. I hate them." "Aha. Give me your brother's address. You can't go home like that." "My parents would kill me," Sarah said. "There." Maria waved her hand to the left. Sarah sighed and took her friend's cell phone out of her purse. Finding it in Tony's contacts, she called him and told him that she was bringing Maria to him now. What a gift. Tony was standing near the entrance when Sarah got out of the cab and then helped Maria, who was barely on her feet. "Here you go, sign your name," Sarah said. "Tony, please don't say anything to your parents." "You're sober, Maria's wasted." "How so?" he asked, supporting his sister by the waist so that she did not fall. "Oh, Slavka. Hi, what are you doing here?" asked Maria, smiling stupidly. "I'm going home, and you bring her to her senses, please." Sarah got back in the cab. "Come on, alcoholic." Tony smiled and headed with Maria towards the driveway. You're all such a shoals. Tony, tell me, are you a dog too? Hey. Maria stopped and looked into her brother's eyes. Of course I am. Go on. He led his sister to the entryway again and pulled out a key with his free hand. Here, you. You don't know how to love at all. All you want to do is fuck, nothing else. Aha. Tony agreed with her and opened the door. Maria staggered into the entryway and immediately sat down near the radiator, covering her head with her hands. Get up. She sat up. He said and stood across from his sister. I cannot. Maria answered quietly. Tony lifted her off the floor, took her in his arms, and called the elevator. You'll get the belt for sure, he said as he stepped into the elevator. Whatever. Maria yawned widely. I'm dizzy. Really? Tomorrow you'll tell me why you got so drunk, you disgrace. Outside the apartment, Tony set his sister on her feet to open the door, then helped her take off her shoes and led her into the bathtub, where he turned on the cold water and began washing her face. It's cold. My makeup will smudge. Maria was indignant. Isn't it too early for you to put on so much plaster and get so drunk? Angrily, he asked and turned on the warm water to better wash the makeup off Maria's face. It's the circumstances, Maria replied with a slurred tongue. What are they? Tony asked. Max, the bastard. I saw him with some girl. He was making out with her and mashing her ass. And I'm an idiot. I was gonna give it to him tomorrow. Maria sighed heavily and cried. Who is Max? Are you going to have sex with him? Tony turned off the water, took Maria by the shoulders, and gave her a good shake. Look at me. Angrily he said, and Maria immediately quieted down and timidly looked into her brother's eyes. Are you a fool? Isn't it too early for you to grow up? I thought he loved me. Maria answered with a sniffle. We'll talk later. Tony took a towel and began to wipe her face. Now you almost look like a human again. Maria got to her feet. She felt dizzy and her eyes were double-visioned. Suddenly she felt a bout of nausea and covered her mouth with her palm. Tony took her to the bathroom without a word. Next time before you get drunk, remember this, maybe it'll stop you, he said, holding her hair back. Mary felt a little better. Washing her face again, Tony took her into the kitchen and turned on the kettle. I'll call my parents now. I won't tell them about your state of incapacity, but we'll talk to you again tomorrow, he said and dialed his father, naturally waking him up with the call. Tony said that Maria would spend the night at his place and that they would be there for lunch tomorrow. Then he poured chamomile tea for his sister, and after she drank it, sent her to bed. Tony, lie with me till I fall asleep, Maria said sadly, covering herself with a blanket. Shall I tell you another story? Tony turned off the light. Please, Maria asked. Are you feeling better? Tony asked and lay down next to his sister. Okay, not so much. She answered and laid her head on his chest. Why is everyone like this? She yawned and closed her eyes. Everyone is different. It's too early for you to sleep with men, he replied, looking up at the ceiling. That's not the point. He was with someone else, and we were supposed to meet tomorrow. It's disgusting. It's good then that I saw today. I didn't make a big mistake. That Max doesn't love you, so you don't need him. Go back to sleep. Tony fixed the blanket. I'm gonna go in the other room. I'm sleepy too. Nah, wait till I fall asleep. Tony, why don't you have a girlfriend? Maria yawned and put her palm under her head. It's too early for me to think about relationships, so nothing serious, he answered. But there is not serious. Sure, enough of that. My personal life is my business. You're all the same, Maria sighed sadly. Men are a little differently organized than women. I think you know that. Maria, go to sleep. I'm already passing out. Tony yawned and closed his eyes. It was not a good morning. Maria opened her eyes and let out a slight groan. She was thirsty and had a headache. Tony. She moaned, but her brother didn't hear her. She got up from the bed and pulled Tony's t-shirt out of the closet. Putting it on, she went into the kitchen. "I'm awake. Doesn't your head hurt?" he asked, putting the phone away. Bo, and I'm thirsty." Maria poured herself a full glass of water and drank it almost in one gulp. "Here, I went to the pharmacy and bought you some magic pills." He handed her a packet of hangover pills. "That's cool. Thank you." She swallowed one right away. "You want breakfast?" Maria went back to her room and got her cell phone out of her purse. While she'd been asleep, she'd gotten a text from Sarah, a friend, asking how she was feeling, and there was also a message from Max. "Hey babe, what time should we meet tonight?" he texted. "No, we're not. Go see the girl from the club." Maria replied and blocked his number, then headed back to the kitchen. "Tony, just please don't say anything to your parents," she asked her brother. "I wonder if you promise it's the first and last time," he answered. "I promise. I've had enough. I hope you'll send Max away." "I already did." "Good for you. You should be thinking about your exams and how you're gonna get into your vet school. I'll study with you, of course, but just do your best, please," said Tony. "Really? Will you help me?" "Of course I'll help you, but I won't take the exams for you." "Thank you. When do we start?" "We'll start next week." "Are you sure you're going to go to veterinary school?" "Yeah, teeth aren't my thing." "You're running away from your family." Tony smiled. "I'm sorry about that. Do you really want to pick your mouth?" "I'm going into prosthetics. It's a very good, high-paying job. Veterinarian's not bad either." "No argument there. I'm kind of hungry." Maria felt her stomach rumbling. Scrambled eggs. What a choice." The girl smiled. "Well, I'm not a cook." Tony took cheese, eggs, and sausage out of the refrigerator. "Eggs and sausage and a cheese sandwich," Maria replied. The day was sunny, and after breakfast Maria offered her brother a little walk in the park, which was not far from his house, and then go home. As promised, Tony didn't tell his parents anything about Maria, and from the next week, he began to study with her every night, and in the end Maria got on the budget, which was celebrated by the whole family in the restaurant. Max quickly got away from her, and the girl was glad that everything turned out so. After all, if she had not seen him by chance in the club, she would have made a big mistake. Now her short-lived romance with Max was a lesson for her, and Maria decided that only for a great love she would give all of herself to a man. In fact, that was her next desire, to find. Okay, let's get some flowers first. Today was Selena's birthday, and it was decided to just sit down tonight as a family. "What are you getting, Mom?" Maria asked him. "A secret." Tony smiled enigmatically. "Oh, come on, I'll see it anyway. When I give it to you, then you'll see." "Are you coming to the club with us on Saturday?" "I could. Carlo's been dragging his feet. He really likes your Sarah. He wants to keep seeing her." "Is he all right?" "Sarah liked you in general." "He's okay. You know him. I don't think your girlfriend still likes me." "She does. I know she does." "Maria, this subject is closed." Tony parked outside a flower store. After choosing a beautiful bouquet, they drove to the house, chatting about Maria's studies and Tony's work, without touching on the topic of liking anymore. "Mom, happy birthday." Tony handed Selena the bouquet and then pulled out a long velvet case containing a gold bracelet. "Well, you've made me golden today." Selena smiled and then hugged Tony and Maria in turn, kissing each on the cheek. Her husband had given her diamond earrings. Maria had given her a gold zodiac sign pendant from this morning, and here was a bracelet. "Come on into the kitchen. I didn't cook anything. We ordered everything from an Italian restaurant." Father and younger sister were already sitting at the table, waiting only for them. Maria loved it when they gathered like this, their friendly family, cheerfully discussing everything that could be discussed. Saturday. Sarah smiled strangely at Carlo, knowing full well that he sympathized with her, but she was still very fond of Tony, who'd paid no attention to her. Even the slow dance he preferred to dance with his sister rather than her. Sarah doesn't like your friend. During one slow dance, Maria said, watching her friend. If she doesn't, she doesn't. No one is forcing you to. Tony replied indifferently. Are you still not ready for a serious relationship? Maria, you like to serve. Tony smiled without answering her question. Here I have no one likes me, I do not date anyone. What's there to hide? And you're all about secrets. You could have told me. We used to tell each other everything, but now you're distant. Distant? We see each other almost every day. What can I tell you? I just started working. I'm not in a serious relationship. Are you happy? Are there any non-serious ones? Maria didn't give up. I'll bite you. You're so clingy. I had some, but it's over now, answered Tony. Is the girl that bored? That's it. Stop torturing me about my personal life. The fast music started again and their conversation stopped. After a while, Sarah thought a bit towards Carlo and then even admitted to her friend that he was okay. Anyway, after the club, they took a cab to her house because it was too far to see her off on foot. My place? Asked Tony to Maria. Come on, it's closer to you, she agreed. When they got to the floor, Maria was the first to notice the girl standing outside her brother's apartment. What are you doing here? He asked, and Maria realized that Tony was not at all happy to see this overnight guest. Who is it? The girl glared angrily at Maria. None of your business. Get away from the door. Tony pulled out his keys, but the girl blocked his way. Who the hell is this little girl, I ask you? She shouted. Get out of my way and get out of my way, said Tony, coming almost right up to her. So this is what you traded me for? She grinned, casting a scornful glance at Maria. We didn't have the kind of relationship that would make you throw tantrums at me now. I see what's wrong with you. She shifted her gaze to Maria. And to you, girl, I want to tell you that you shouldn't get involved with this dog. He'll find a replacement in no time. She threw a hateful glance at Tony and then went to the elevator. Shall we go to sleep or watch a movie? Tony asked when they were in his apartment. We could watch a movie, so you dumped her. Stopped seeing her. I didn't expect her to come over. We weren't serious. She didn't seem to think so. Maria answered and went to the kitchen. She had voiced that she didn't want a relationship when we started dating. She was interested in meeting and having a good time. Maria, I'm not a monk, and I was fine with it. And then it started. Well, when one is no longer satisfied with the format of a relationship, one should break up. I don't get it. I'm against it. Maria looked at her brother with judgment. You're right to be against it. Let's go to the room to choose a movie. Having settled down on the bed, they began to watch the latest movie. Maybe a mystical thriller, asked Tony. No. Not soaps. And not a horror movie. Comedy. I could do that. Opting for a comedy they both hadn't seen, Maria and Tony made themselves comfortable and stared at the big TV hanging on the wall in front of them. Opening her eyes, Maria realized that she was actually lying on top of Tony. Her head was resting against his chin, and one of his hands was resting on her back. She froze for a moment, then slowly raised her head to see if he was asleep. He was asleep. Apparently, they'd both passed out without finishing the movie. She decided and gently removed his hand before sliding off him and rolling to the other side of the bed, immediately wrapping herself in the blanket. Strange feelings came over the girl, and she blushed with embarrassment. Maybe she shouldn't stay at Tony's sleepover anymore, she thought, and closed her eyes, slowly drifting into sleep. She woke up a second time to find no one in bed but her, and then she heard the front door open. She got up, adjusted her shirt, pulled up her jeans and left the room. Hi, Sophia, said Tony with a smile and handed her a bag. Bought us yogurt and pastries for breakfast. Maria took the package and went to the kitchen, thinking all the time about the first time she woke up and the feelings that came over her at that moment. Of course, she loved Tony. There was no question about that. But how did she love him? For the first time, that question began to roll around in her head. It was embarrassing to have such thoughts, but she couldn't get rid of them. "Why are you like this?" Tony asked, obviously noticing that his sister was puzzled about something, because she looked very pensive. "Nothing." Maria smiled immediately and put the pies in the microwave. "What are your plans for today?" he asked her. "Nothing. I'll have breakfast and go home." "And you?" answered Maria. "I want to rest today. I have a lot of work tomorrow. I want to watch a movie, because we didn't watch it yesterday." After these words, Maria blushed and immediately turned away. "You can keep me company. We'll order sushi for lunch, watch movies, and in the evening, nothing. I just need to wash up and get ready for the institute," Maria answered. "Well, it won't take long to wash, and you can do it at my place. And packing for the institute takes a lot of time." "Well, then let's watch another movie, and after sushi I'll go," Maria agreed, unable to find the words to explain her haste. Tony began to suggest movies to watch, and this time they decided to watch sci-fi. Maria snuggled away from her brother, deciding for herself that from now on she would avoid tactile contact with him. Maria took a cab home. Tony, of course, insisted on driving her home, but she convinced her brother to stay and rest before the hard work of the day. All week, Maria found different excuses not to meet Tony, but on Saturday, he came to visit them. After having lunch with everyone, Maria went to her room and sat down at her computer. "May I?" Tony knocked on her shit and, without waiting for an answer, came into the room when the parents, together with Julia, went for a walk with Buddy. "Why didn't you leave?" Maria asked, and without getting up from the computer chair, turned to face him. "You didn't want to go either." "Maria, you've been avoiding me all week. What have I done wrong?" he asked and sat down on the bed. "You imagined it." Maria made a carefree appearance and smiled. "How about honestly?" Tony kept his gaze on her. "Honestly," she replied. "Shall we go outside too? The weather's nice today," he suggested. "I don't feel like going out today." "What do you feel like doing?" "I wanted to read something. It's for studying." "Am I interrupting?" "I can read later, after you leave." "I wanted to invite you to a concert. The Golden Gramophone is in 2 weeks. I got 2 tickets. Maybe you should go with a girl." It sounded a bit snide, which Maria didn't mean, but it came out that way. "I don't have a girlfriend." "Maria, what the hell is wrong with you? After last weekend you've been avoiding me. Now you're talking like I'm guilty of something. What's wrong?" "I'm not leaving here until you answer me," said Tony, completely unaware of what was going on with his sister. "I just don't think I should have any more sleepovers with you," Maria admitted. "What happened to make you feel that way all of a sudden?" "Tony, you and I fell asleep without finishing the movie, and when I woke up, the girl was silent, trying to find the right words." "That?" Tony asked, waiting for her to answer. "We didn't sleep like brother and sister," she said and blushed, remembering that day. "And how did we sleep?" he asked, not taking his eyes off her and smiling slightly. "In a cuddle, well, you know, as who?" answered Maria. "Now I see. So you were confused by the fact that we slept cuddled together." Tony got up from the bed and squatted next to the computer chair where Maria was sitting. "Doesn't that make you uncomfortable?" she asked and looked away. "Maria, we are not brother and sister," he said, continuing to smile. "Tony, I don't know what you mean by that." Maria stood up abruptly from her chair and Tony rose to follow her. Once between him and the computer chair, Maria became nervous and stepped aside abruptly. "What if I told you that I treat you completely differently from my sister?" asked Tony, not realizing how his heart suddenly hammered in Maria's chest after those words. She turned around and leaned back against the computer desk, feeling her cheeks flaming. "Otherwise, what's that like?" she asked quietly. Tony came so close to her that she could hear his heart beating as fast as hers. "I think you can see how," he answered, tilting his head so that his lips almost touched Maria's. Without realizing what she was doing, Maria put her arms around Tony's neck and closed her eyes. She didn't have to wait long. He immediately began kissing her, wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her against him. The realization that she was kissing Tony suddenly made Maria abruptly break the kiss. The girl pushed away the man she had considered her brother for years and took a step back, trying to regain her breath. "Tony, go away," she said and put her hand out in front of her, letting him know not to come near her. "Maria, let's just talk," he said, in no hurry to leave her room. "About what? We shouldn't have. Oh my God." Maria clutched her head and sighed heavily. Her thoughts were jumbled, and her soul was suddenly gripped by an incomprehensible fear, not to mention the embarrassment she was feeling right now. "Maria, calm down. Sit down and we'll just talk," Tony replied, seeing her state of mind. "We've ruined everything. How can we continue to communicate after something like this?" She looked at him with eyes full of frustration. "Please just listen to me." Tony took her hand, but Maria immediately pulled her hand out of his arm. "What are you so afraid of? I realize I've shocked you, but Maria, I've been looking at you for a long time now, not as a sister, but as a girl I really like, even more than that. To be honest, I've been trying to fight my feelings for you for a long time, but I can't treat you like a sister." "Jesus, Tony, what are you talking about?" Maria covered her face with her palms. "What's wrong with a man liking a woman?" "Well, we grew up together for a while, during which we got to know each other from all sides. You and I spent a lot of time together. Were we not good for each other? Answer yourself. Do you love me?" "Of course I love you, Tony, but how?" Maria was suddenly silent. She didn't understand how she loved him. "A brother? That's not the way you kissed me a few minutes ago." "I don't know what came over me. It was a mistake," Maria answered. "I don't think so," Tony said, and they both heard the front door open and Buddy barking. "We'll talk later. Let's go and have tea. I've brought a delicious cake," he said afterwards. "I don't want anything." Maria went to the window and pulled back the curtain and looked out into the distance. Tony quietly came up behind her and put his arm around her waist. "Have you lost your mind with everything?" Maria bounced away from him like a scolded woman. "Good. We'll get back to this conversation later." Tony sighed and walked out of her room. "Is it Maria going to have tea?" Selena asked when everyone came into the kitchen except Maria. "I'll get her," said Nancy, and went to her sister's room. Finding Maria sitting on the bed and covering her face with her palms, Nancy was very surprised, not understanding what had suddenly happened to her sister. "Maria, what are you doing?" she asked and sat down beside her. "Nothing." She sighed and took her hands away from her face. "What's wrong? Did you have a fight with Tony?" "No, just some problems. It's nothing." Maria forced a smile. "Let's have tea then. Everyone's in the kitchen. Come on." Maria got out of bed. She didn't want her parents to think she had something wrong. At the table, Maria tried not to look at Tony, feeling that he occasionally glanced at her. She finished her tea quickly, and saying that she had a lot of studying to do, retired to her room. When she saw Tony's car outside the institute, Maria stopped, feeling her heart beat faster. "Is the groom meeting her again?" Mickey asked, appearing as if out of thin air. "Of course," answered Maria, and having gathered her courage, went to the car. Tony immediately got out of the car. "Hi," he said with a smile. "Why did you come here?" Maria asked, giving him a stern look. "We didn't agree yesterday," he answered and opened the car door. "Get in. Let's go and sit somewhere." Maria silently got into the car and fastened her seatbelt. What frightened her most was that she wanted to repeat yesterday's kiss and more. Tony stopped the car at the nearest cafe. "Have you come to your senses?" he asked after they'd ordered. "More than okay," Maria replied. "Maria, I want you and me to be together," said Tony. "And how are you going to tell your parents that?" Imagine how they would react to such news. "No, nothing can happen between us, and I'm so sorry that we ruined the beautiful relationship we had with each other," Maria replied, staring at the menu. "Our relationship will be even more beautiful, and our parents will be shocked for a while, but everything will be fine. It's like you keep forgetting that we are not brother and sister or blood relatives. There's no impediment to our relationship." "Tony, I don't know what to say at all." Maria looked at him with a pained look. Fighting herself was very difficult, especially since he really wasn't her brother in essence. "Let's tell our parents today that you and I are getting married," he suggested. The girl's eyes widened, and she paled and opened her mouth to stare at him. "Well, not directly in the forehead, but we'll talk carefully. Explain that we love each other." "Do you mean it now?" Maria regained the power of speech. "Absolutely." Tony put his hand on top of hers. "Maria, I love you." "How long have you loved me?" she asked shyly, starting to blush. "I realized about 3 years ago, but I can't say for how long. Does it matter?" A waiter came to their table and brought their order. "Shall we go to my place after the cafe?" Tony asked as the waiter left. "Did you just invite me for a cupcake?" Maria asked, blushing even more. "No, I just want to be alone with you. I promise I won't hit on you. Unless you want to, nothing will happen," he answered. Amazed at herself, Maria drove to Tony's house, having previously informed her parents that she wouldn't come home tonight. She should have said no, but instead she agreed, unable to cope with her own desires. Tony had kept his word. He didn't even try to kiss Maria when they were in his apartment, but Maria really wanted him to kiss her, and despite the fact that she was afraid of intimacy with a man, because she had never had anyone else, she'd also wanted it, or rather to say she wanted it with him, and to get married too, even thought about the fact that they would have 2 children. "What are you doing?" Tony asked her, seeing how Maria shook her head. "Nothing. Just a little blurry in the eyes," she lied, walking into the bedroom. "Are we going to watch movies again?" she asked. "Whatever you want. We can watch a movie. We can just talk," he said. "Let's watch Guardians of the Galaxy." Sarah went to the movies last night. She liked the movie. She says it's already on the net. If it is, let's do it. A few minutes later, Maria and Tony were already sitting on the bed at a pioneer's distance from each other. He raised his arm at shoulder level, inviting Maria to settle down next to him. Realizing this without words, she scooted closer and even covered her eyes for a moment when his hand came down on her shoulder. Because of the pile of thoughts in her head, Maria wasn't up for a movie, so she couldn't stand it. "Tony, kiss me please." Suddenly she whispered, after about half an hour of watching the movie. The man smiled and gently touched her lips with his lips. And then something happened that Maria didn't expect from herself. Tony didn't insist on more than a kiss, but he was inclined to it by Maria, not saying a word, but rather quickly releasing him from his clothes and caressing his body with her hands. "Time to wake up." Maria heard Tony's quiet voice and opened her eyes slightly. "5 more minutes," she whispered back, and a smile appeared on her lips. "Sophia," he answered, covering her neck with kisses. "At least 3 more minutes," Maria said, not wanting to get out of his embrace. "Good," Tony said, pulling her closer to him. Eventually they lay there for 10 minutes, and then they had to get up. "How are you?" Tony asked Maria. He was of course very careful, afraid of hurting her, and it seemed to him that what had happened between them last night had pleased Maria as much as he had, but he was still worried about the girl. "Very well. And you?" "I'm very inexperienced." "Did you have a good time with me?" she asked, blushing. Tony immediately put his arms around her and placed a light kiss on her lips. "It was great," he replied. "We'll tell our parents tonight." "No," Maria objected. "Let's not tonight." She was still afraid to imagine their reaction to such news. "When? Maria, I don't want to hide and meet you secretly." "Don't worry, I'll take the fall if there is one. But I know they'll eventually digest it, understand, and won't hold it against us. Let's do it next weekend." "Why wait so long?" "I need to get in the mood." "Saturday then, and no excuses later." "Okay," Maria agreed. "Go wash up, and I'll cook breakfast." Tony kissed Maria again and went to the kitchen. Stopping the car near Maria's institute, Tony wished her a good day, kissed her goodbye, and said that today he had a lot of work and they would not be able to meet, but he would call her when he was free. All day Maria smiled, not really getting into her studies. Her thoughts were far away from her right now, and there was nothing she could do about it. "You've been in the clouds all day today," said her classmate Ariana, with whom they were on friendly terms. "Are you in love?" "You could say that," said Maria. "And who's the lucky guy? Someone from the course or from the institute?" "No, he's not from the institute." Maria was not going to go into details. "Tony, kiss me please." Suddenly she whispered, after about half an hour of watching the movie. The man smiled and gently touched her lips with his lips. And then something happened that Maria didn't expect from herself. Tony didn't insist on more than a kiss, but he was inclined to it by Maria, not saying a word, but rather quickly releasing him from his clothes and caressing his body with her hands. "Time to wake up." Maria heard Tony's quiet voice and opened her eyes slightly. "5 more minutes," she whispered back, and a smile appeared on her lips. "Sophia," he answered, covering her neck with kisses. "At least 3 more minutes," Maria said, not wanting to get out of his embrace. "Good," Tony said, pulling her closer to him. Eventually they lay there for 10 minutes, and then they had to get up. "How are you?" Tony asked Maria. He was of course very careful, afraid of hurting her, and it seemed to him that what had happened between them last night had pleased Maria as much as he had, but he was still worried about the girl. "Very well. And you?" "I'm very inexperienced." "Did you have a good time with me?" she asked, blushing. Tony immediately put his arms around her and placed a light kiss on her lips. "It was great," he replied. "We'll tell our parents tonight." "No," Maria objected. "Let's not tonight." She was still afraid to imagine their reaction to such news. "When? Maria, I don't want to hide and meet you secretly." "Don't worry, I'll take the fall if there is one. But I know they'll eventually digest it, understand, and won't hold it against us. Let's do it next weekend." "Why wait so long?" "I need to get in the mood." "Saturday then, and no excuses later." "Okay," Maria agreed. "Go wash up, and I'll cook breakfast." Tony kissed Maria again and went to the kitchen. Stopping the car near Maria's institute, Tony wished her a good day, kissed her goodbye, and said that today he had a lot of work and they would not be able to meet, but he would call her when he was free. All day Maria smiled, not really getting into her studies. Her thoughts were far away from her right now, and there was nothing she could do about it. "You've been in the clouds all day today," said her classmate Ariana, with whom they were on friendly terms. "Are you in love?" "You could say that," said Maria. "And who's the lucky guy? Someone from the course or from the institute?" "No, he's not from the institute." Maria was not going to go into details. "Secret?" "No, he works at Dad's clinic," Maria said, and it was basically true, because Tony worked with his father worked. "Dentist?" "Aha," Maria said. "Are you going home?" "I'm waiting for Ina. We were going to the mall. She's going to her sister's wedding. We're going to pick out a dress for her. Do you want to come with us?" Ariana suggested it. "I'm going home," Maria answered. "See you tomorrow then." "See you tomorrow." As Maria left, Mickey approached Ariana. "Why are you so sour today?" she asked him. "Nothing. Do you happen to know if Maria is serious about this on the audit?" he asked. "What audit?" Ariana didn't understand. "Well, on the grey audit that often picks her up." Ariana laughed. "So it's her brother who picks her up. But she has a boyfriend too. So Mickey, forget it, and switch to another subject." Ariana replied. "Brother?" asked the man with his eyes bulging. "Yeah. Why are you so surprised?" "No reason," Mickey answered and walked away. He had seen Maria kissing this brother in the morning. In the evening, Tony didn't call, but came to their house with his parents. Maria was terribly afraid that Tony did not stay long in Maria's room. They talked a little, and then he went to sleep in the room where he once lived. Mickey arrived early on purpose and waited for Maria. When he saw the grey Audi, he hid behind one of the pillars near the entrance to the institute and watched. From this spot, he could see Maria kissing her brother. Holy shit, he was shocked by what he saw. He had never seen such a perversion before. Mickey took out his phone and took a few pictures. He didn't wait for Maria to get out of the car and went to the institute. Throughout the whole class, Maria saw Mickey staring at her with a very strange look. When they ran into each other in the cafeteria, she couldn't stand it and asked, "May I ask why you stare at me all the time?" Maria asked him. "I'll tell you after class," he answered. "I'm not really interested in the reason. Just stop looking at me like that," said Maria and went to Ariana, who was already paying for her lunch. Mickey waited for Maria on the street after class, happy that the grey Audi was not near the institute. "Shall we walk to the subway?" he asked when the girl went outside. "No. Mickey, I've told you a million times I'm not going out with you. Stop following me already," Maria said irritably. "I didn't know you were a pervert, Maria Lannister." He grinned nastily, then pulled his phone out of his jacket pocket and showed Maria the pictures of her making out with Tony in the car. "I'm really curious. Do your parents know what their kids are doing? At the institute too? No one knows yet, but that's just for now," he said in such a tone, as if there was a battle between them in which she lost. Maria was frightened at first, and then suddenly began to laugh. Could she have thought that this underdog was spying on her? This is spy stuff. "Mickey, are you playing spy?" Maria asked through her laughter. "No. I accidentally found out that you're with your own brother, pervert," he replied, making a squeamish grimace. "Without knowing anything, you shouldn't draw conclusions. He's not my brother." Maria stopped laughing and looked at her interlocutor like an idiot. "Your brother comes for you or the grey auditory." He didn't understand. Ariana was obviously telling the truth. There was no doubt about it. "No, we have different parents, so I'm not a pervert, but you're a total asshole." Not wanting to continue this conversation, Maria hurried away. When Tony called her in the evening, she told him about the situation and they laughed together. "I hope that Mickey doesn't go running all over the institute and spreading gossip," he said. "What's there to gossip about?" "I told him that you and I are not related," answered Maria. "He can present it differently, but there is no point in it. Maria, come to me tomorrow after the institute. I'll give my father the spare keys, and you take it from him. I think he'll understand right away if you give me the keys. Let's bet on Friday I'll come to you, and on Saturday we'll go home together and talk to your parents," Maria suggested. "It's a long way to Friday. Maria, I want to see you more than once a week. I want you to move in with me," Tony confessed. "I miss you too, Tony, but I don't want it to be a mess. We should get together and have a proper talk. We'll do that on Saturday, and then we'll go to your place on Friday." "Okay," he sighed heavily. "Kisses and good night's sleep." "You too," Maria replied with a smile. Ariana immediately rushed to Maria as soon as she arrived at the institute. "Maria, this Mickey told me today that you are sleeping with your brother and lying that he is not your brother. she said quietly so no one would hear them. What a degenerate. Maria clenched her fists. Ariana, Tony really isn't my brother, she admitted. I don't understand anything. You said yourself that he's your older brother. Ariana looked pointedly at Maria. I did. His father married my mom when I was 5 and Tony was 10. Since then, we grew up together. Then my mom gave birth to Nancy. We both call our parents mom-dad, but Tony and I aren't related, Maria explained. Wow, so you were living together and suddenly you had an affair? No, it just started, and Tony hasn't lived with us for a long time. Ariana, we were always good together. We just didn't realize we had different feelings for each other right away. How did your parents feel about it? Asked Ariana, flapping her eyes. We haven't told them yet. We're going on Saturday. There is nothing wrong with the fact that we love each other and want to be together. I'm nervous about it, but I think it'll be fine. Without shock, of course, will not do. But Mom and Dad we have normal will understand, I think. I don't want any rumors to spread around the institute. I won't tell anyone. And unless your brother and sister, there's nothing wrong with your affair. There's nothing to gossip about, Ariana replied. Exactly. Maria agreed with her, and they went to their first class. Friday. Tony was waiting for Maria at the very door of the institute, holding a beautiful bouquet of flowers. Ariana smiled widely when she saw him and then looked at Maria, whose face lit up with a happy smile when she saw Tony, and without any shyness threw herself on his neck and kissed him on the lips. Noticing a disgruntled Mickey, Ariana immediately went over to him. Stop staring at them, she said, and shut your mouth or your jaw will fall off. You said he was her brother. Mickey threw an angry look at his classmate. I was wrong. It's just that their parents are married. There's no blood relation between Maria and Tony, so they're not perverts. Okay, Mickey muttered, glanced at the kissing couple, and then walked away. Maria and Tony hugged and walked to his car. So how are you doing at the institute? That Mickey didn't spread any lewd rumors? Tony asked, starting the car. I told Ariana, but I told her everything as it was. It's just that before I told her you were my brother without going into details. Didn't your parents ask where you were sleeping tonight? They did. I told them I was going to the club with Sarah, Carlo and you, and since you live much closer to the club, I'd be staying at your place tonight. They react calmly and don't even seem to suspect anything. Maria smiled. Sarah is starting to have an affair with Carlo. Oh yeah, and you kept saying she liked me, said Tony. I know. It's a good thing she switched. Jealous of me? Tony smiled slyly. Nope, I knew you were indifferent to her, Maria replied. As soon as they were in Tony's apartment, he immediately hugged Maria and kissed her, taking her into the room. I missed you terribly, so I won't let you sleep tonight, he whispered, deftly releasing her from her clothes. I don't mind that at all, Maria replied, unbuttoning his jeans. She even felt a little ashamed of her lecherous behavior, but her desires overcame her shame. She felt so good right now, and she didn't want to leave Tony even for a minute. She didn't care about gossip if it got around the institute. She wasn't afraid to confess everything to her parents. She wanted to be with him, not brotherly love, and what was happening between them now was beautiful and filled her soul with boundless happiness. After stopping first at a cafe to have breakfast, Maria and Tony went to her parents to finally tell them about their relationship. Are you afraid? Tony asked Maria before they entered the apartment. Not as much as before, she said, turning the key in the lock. Selena was the first to greet them. How was the dance? She asked, smiling at the children. It was fine, Tony answered, helping Marie take off her jacket. Wash your hands, come into the kitchen, I made pancakes. We just had breakfast at the cafe, so we'll have pancakes later. Tony answered. Where's Dad? In the office with the documents, Selena said, and Nancy went out with her friends. She'll be back by lunchtime. Mom, can you get Dad for me, please? We need to talk, said Tony. What's wrong? She asked, and the smile disappeared from her face. Nothing bad, he said. Everyone gathered in the kitchen, and Tony was the first to speak. Mom, Dad, don't be nervous and don't react very violently, he said, noticing how Maria turned pale. The thing is that Maria and I, well, in short, we are not really brother and sister, and we have a slightly different relationship. We're serious and we want to be together. Selena turned white as a sheet, and Alexander frowned and stared at his son in amazement. I realize you're in shock, but there's nothing wrong with me and Maria loving each other, Tony continued. Yes, but, Selena mumbled, not knowing what to say. What's the but, she thought, not finishing her sentence. Well, Alexander said and put his hands around his head. Mom, Dad, but Tony and I are not related to each other. We can be together, and there is nothing wrong with it. Maria rambled on. I see now what you were doing when you stayed at his place. Selena said this with a note of reproach in her voice and looked at her daughter with a judgmental look. Not at all, said Tony in his own defense. I wonder how you realize that. Alexander raised his tone slightly. The man was clearly angry. They started tumbling around in bed and it hit you. Daddy, Maria gasped and blushed. I'm just shocked. Alexander shook his head. Dad, we want to get married. We want to live together. What's that got to do with tumbling around in bed? Tony said. So you're going to start a family? Alexander sighed heavily. Is that a bad thing? You're looking at me as if Maria and I were incestuous. I understand that all this is unexpected for you and Mom, but we don't want to hide our relationship and feelings from you, Tony replied. We need to all calm down, said Selena, and took a breath, and then an exhale, trying to come to her senses after such news. That's for sure. Alexander agreed with his wife. We'll have an interesting family. Although, you're really not brother and sister, so. Alexander waved his hand and got up from the table. Where are you going? Selena asked him. To get a whiskey. Do you want some? No, but I need a drink. Grab me some wine, Selena said. Mom, it's no big deal. Maria put her hand over her mother's. It's all very sudden. We didn't realize it was like this between you two. We couldn't even imagine it. Selena sighed. Are you against us getting married? Maria asked, looking sadly at her mother. You need to get over all this. Of course, you're not brother and sister, and you can have a relationship. It's just that we all lived as a family, and to me, you are both my children. Selena suddenly cried, and Tony immediately got up from his seat and hugged her. Mom, what are you doing? He asked and smiled slightly. Alexander returned to the kitchen with 2 bottles and poured whiskey for himself and wine for his wife. Selena, drink a little and calm down, he said, and the woman realized her head and looked at Tony. How are we going to tell Nancy all this? She asked. She knows that Maria and I are not related to each other. We'll explain everything. Don't worry, please. Oh. Selena took a glass of wine and drank it in one gulp. Looking at his wife, Alexander drank half a glass of whiskey, took a bite of lemon, wrinkled his nose, and looked at the children. When are we going to get married? He asked. We haven't applied yet, but of course we want to in the summer, Tony answered. Will you be staying at your place? Sure, I'd like Maria to move in with me now. Well, the man poured himself another whiskey and drank it all down again. I hope it's serious and there's no divorce in your future, he said. It can't be more serious. I've loved Maria for a long time and I'm sure I always will, answered Tony. I'm sure that's a good thing. Selena, what do you think? He looked at his wife. What can I say? If they love each other, let them get married. The woman looked at the children and smiled slightly, and Tony hugged Maria without any shyness. So Nancy returned from her walk, and it was explained to her that Maria and Tony would soon become husband and wife. The girl, of course, was also shocked by such news, but she took it less emotionally than her parents. "It wasn't that scary," said Tony with a smile as he and Maria returned to his house, taking most of Maria's things. "I was still terribly nervous though," she admitted. "I'd noticed. But it's still good." He hugged the girl and looked into her eyes. "Maria, I love you so much, and I'm very happy that we don't have to hide anything, as if we were criminals with you," he said. "It made me feel so much better that we confessed everything. Mom and Dad had scared me at first, but I had faith that they would understand and wouldn't be against us. And I didn't doubt it," he answered. "I'm still surprised that I didn't realize how much I loved you before, and not like my brother," Maria said with a smile. "I didn't realize that I loved you differently either. The most important thing is that we finally realized it, and now we are together. Shall we go through your things?" "Let's go." They hugged and went to their room. Maria and Tony married in the summer, and 3 years later they had a son. By then Maria had just finished her studies and had already done some work in a veterinary clinic. All her dreams came true, albeit with some nuances, because she no longer has an older brother. But she does not regret it at all.